Boom.
We going?
It's going.
Sweet.
It sounds cool too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's cool.
What are you thinking? What's going on in life right now?
I mean, life's going.
Got the 3 C's.
Got the
And then some.
It's just life hitting me. Hitting me hard. Yeah. We're getting through it though. I mean, like I'm back in public, so that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
And summer classes are, I think, gonna be pretty fun. This first one at least.
How many classes are you doing?
I'm taking one now, and then I have another one starting mid-June.
And that was like the shorter one.
Yeah, this one's
right?
mycology. The second one is physics. Physics is 2 months.
That's a short time to fit physics in.
Yeah. I'm not excited for that one. Mycology? Heck yeah. Physics? Mm-mm.
Don't pay attention over here. I'm just
Okay,
adjusting
not
things.
looking.
Like it's not a big deal.
Okay.
You do you.
Yeah. But I think mycology will be fun. I'm excited.
What's mycology exactly?
Study of fungi, and I'm pretty stoked.
Isn't it fungi? Fungi? Fungi?
We had a whole discussion about it in class yesterday. Fungi is correct.
Really?
I used to say fungi. I've listened to a couple podcasts and stuff, and one of them was like, it doesn't actually matter, you can say either one. But yesterday she was very adamant.
The
fungi.
teacher was?
Yeah, fungi. Yeah, but I'm pretty excited about that one.
I have tons of ideas.
You go
I don't
for
know
it.
which one. Okay, so we watched a video. I don't think the video needs context, but I took a lot from it. What did you take from it? I want you to start.
I mean, I think a lot of it was about, like raising your kids to be independent or motivated on their own. And like this man who's obviously very passionate and motivated himself and like is working out and is, working to make his life better, but his kids aren't necessarily. And just like how there's kind of a gap between this man who's obviously doing well for himself or trying to do well for himself, and then just like the failure to pass that on to his kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of what I took out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a thought I've been having a lot lately, which
Mm-hmm.
is like the right amount of like deprivation to teach people,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. Because, I mean, the lady said it really good. I wrote it down. A spoiled child is not monetary. They're either given or fixed for.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be a lot of money. That helps to be provided for.
Yeah.
But that was interesting because there's a certain amount where you want to deprive from your kids.
Yeah. I mean, you have to teach them to do things themselves.
Mhm.
Otherwise, they never will.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to ask this to one of my Christian friends from a biblical idea with, I hope I don't have the person wrong, with Moses wandering through the desert. Because if I have it right, they were doing that for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's at least 3 generations.
Yeah.
4 decades,
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
people
Mhm,
coming in.
mhm.
So my thought was, and I was going to ask you if this is like found in the story, but like the kids that were born and then were around teenage years, right as they came out of the desert, what was their mentality like compared to the kids when they just got into the desert? Because you see, like they saw the reasoning because they were running from tyranny.
Right.
But then when you're born, and especially 30 to 40 years later into something, there's more separation from that thing.
Yeah. Right.
And like comparing that, the dad had a lot of struggle. Like his mom, he said, died at 16, and then probably other things that happened as he grew up and tried to keep working at things. And there's no way to get that as a kid.
Yeah.
Just because you're born late comparatively,
Right.
So it's like properly teaching that into a kid.
Instead of like a hardship causing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because life's going to do that by default. But then if you as a parent can do that, I don't know, to a certain degree of structure.
Right.
Where.
Like encouraging your kid to learn these things on their own. But how do you do that without, like he was talking about like forcing these things on his kids, and he didn't want to do that, but they're also not being receptive. So finding like the balance between forcing it, but also, or like not forcing it, but still having it actually be instilled.
And I really like that video because he like most would stop at the, I'm going to force him to do this. Like a lot of parents would, I feel like. But he was smart enough to take it to the next level of like, I'm not going to force him because that's going to bite me in the back.
Right.
Like he
The more
he
you push
intuitively,
something, the less people want to do it.
yeah, and he like intuitively understood that, which helped us like, I think in the video, get to the next level. And for me, when I was like 3 minutes in, I thought it was going to be like a resolution needed with the wife.
I did too. He had a lot to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot going on.
I thought the wife was sabotaging him, and I don't. But like, that wasn't the conclusion they came to at the end, which was cool. It circled back to it's your fault.
Yeah,
which
it
I
was
love.
really interesting because it started like he was upset with his wife, and then at the end, the wife is telling him, "Yo, dude, don't clean the bathroom. Just like let's go hang out." Yeah, no, it was definitely interesting, and I'd be curious to hear the wife's perspective because again, at the beginning, he was very upset with the wife. But that's very one-sided. And in my opinion, things are never quite that one-sided. Like there's always something going on the other person's side. And so I think it would have been interesting to like hear the wife's perspective. And somewhere in the video, they talk about how one of the kids had an internship opportunity and he was mad because the wife told the kid no. But I'd be curious to hear why did the wife say that? Because like obviously the wife wants the best for the kids. Like, parents want the best for their kids. So I'd be curious to hear why she said no or why she said not go for it instead of just the like hard she said no and she didn't come talk to me about it. Like, I'm sure she had her reasons too.
Yeah. And like 2 minutes into the video, he says, it's my fault because I'm doing all these things for him. And like, they just don't pick it up because they don't have all the context. But then they finally circle back to that. Like, dude, what is it? You're giving them too much almost?
Yeah.
You're making it too easy for them.
He's not making them do anything.
Yeah.
Like, he works, he cooks, he cleans. Like, he's really not making them do anything for themselves.
Yeah. What would you do in that whole situation?
If I was the dad? Is that what you mean?
How would you want it set up? So just from all angles.
I mean, the dad needs to stop cleaning the bathroom. But, I mean, I think for the 19-year-old, it's pretty late in life to learn to clean a bathroom. Like, in my opinion, that should definitely happen younger. I think responsibility should start being given to people maybe, like, middle school, early high school. Like, people should definitely start learning to clean bathrooms and, like, cooking for themselves. Like, I started cooking for myself early senior year because I went vegetarian, and so I had to. And I, like, kind of wish it had happened before that. Like, because that was very sudden. I was like, oh, wow, I can't eat anything. Guess I got to learn to cook for myself. But I think it should definitely happen before then. And that's, I mean, because then you can, like, walk your kids through it, and then you can actually teach them to, like, clean a bathroom instead of them being 19 and you being like, crap, they don't know how to clean a bathroom, and they, like, aren't going to do it if I don't do it. So I think, like, that's a little too late. Their 9-year-old has hope, I think.
Yeah, to turn around.
But I think the older kids, it's not, like, too late, but they should have started earlier.
It's a weird feeling because the feeling of, I wish I was taught this sooner, once you learn it.
Yeah.
That's a weird feeling, right? Because it's like, I wish I was given responsibility earlier.
Right, yeah. I mean, my parents and I have talked about this. Like, they didn't really teach me to clean. I kind of just did it on my own. But, like, they didn't sit me down and be like, hey, Chelsea, this is how you clean a bathroom. And, like, my parents moved, so we were, like, deep cleaning. And I was like, Mom, I don't know how to do this. And she was like, man, I really should have taught you how to do that a long time ago. Yeah. But, like, we both look back and know that. Like, my parents look back and know that, too. It's not just, like, me who realizes that, which is, I don't know. It was interesting.
I think a difference is I don't know if my parents have realized that for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think they have for my little sister, but she still lives at home. So, she hasn't had to go on her own and, like, learn those things yet. Whereas, like, I moved out and I had to figure those things out, and now I go back and they're like, oh. But, yeah. I mean, you have 2 younger brothers, too. Do you think that they're teaching them those kind of things or not?
It's really complicated because I feel like my brothers are doing really good for their age. But there's something I've been trying to distill from my parents' parenting that was like, me and my brothers are all very different, but we all have this, like, I don't know, like, pretty solid independence with us. And I don't know, like, where that came from. Yeah. Like, my dad's pretty disagreeable and drives independence from that, like, from disagreeability. Yeah. And guys tend to be more disagreeable. Right. So it could be partly from that. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out because I think that's a really good trait of like there's a really good side to the fuck you mentality.
Yeah.
Of like, I'm going to do what I want. And especially when it's your own path that's like good, like there's utility to that. There's the bad part where you say fuck you to the good things.
Yep.
So everything has a balance to them.
But being able to take care of yourself is like definitely important.
Yeah.
Being able to have the drive to do what you want
Mm-hmm.
without somebody like pushing you to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. But I wish I was taught all the things I know now, like just general home economics almost earlier.
Right.
And I don't think my brothers are being taught that, but at the same time, because it's context dependent, there's a lot of other things hitting our family right now.
Yeah.
That they're already getting a different form of education with some things that are going on right now.
Yeah.
If that's very vague.
It is, but that's okay.
But yeah.
I mean, even like my family, my sisters and I are all very different. Like, I'm pretty independent, and my older sister is independent in the way that she says "fuck you," but not necessarily in the way that she has the motivation to do it herself. And my little sister is very dependent, and I'm pretty independent, but I definitely still like need my parents for things. So it's interesting.
How old's your older sister?
My older sister is 22.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she's my age.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's wild.
A little bit. And then my younger sister she just turned 17. She's getting old, man. In my mind, she's not 17.
Is she going to school?
She's in high school.
Like after high school, is she going to go to college? That's what I meant.
She declared very firmly the other day that she is not going to college. And my parents said, we'll talk about this later. But she was very firm in it. But she's talked about going to school. And like, she used to want to go into the medical field somewhere, which is a lot of school. And so the I'm not going to school was, pretty harsh turnaround from like, I'm going to need 8 years of school.
Yeah.
So I always saw her going to a community college and getting a 2-year, but we shall see.
First thing that came to mind is like, in general, I feel like a lot of our authorities have abused their power to the sense that sometimes it's hard to recommend what used to be traditional.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes it then tough, because what's nice about tradition is it gives you like a good rule book.
Yeah, there's something to follow, a path to go on. Yeah.
But when the preachers of the rule book have screwed over the power, I think it's really detrimental to us right now. And I think we're in like I don't know where we're in it right now. It's easier to say when you're out of it.
Yeah.
But we're somewhere in it. I don't know if we're at the start or at the end, or if this has peaked.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so multifaceted that what worries me is that it hits in multiple domains so hard that you can't recover.
Yeah.
And I know that's vague as well, but like different authority figures, like our different health systems, the college system, the governmental system, all of those things in different ways and connected ways have abused their power.
Mm-hmm.
And we need those things,
Yeah.
That's the tough thing, is like I want them around. And it's better when they're fully functioning, and right now they're not fully functioning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they're so big that it's not you can solve one of them if you really work diligently in like a month. Like it's a very
Our problems are deeper and long term.
Yeah. Like I heard earlier today, it's like the process of going to hell was very slow, and the process of getting out is going to be very slow.
Yeah.
As well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it took us a while to get to where we are.
Yeah.
And undoing what we've done, it's going to be pretty tricky.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to undo too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the worry there is like, let's start trying to double back.
Mm-hmm.
And the worry is multiple things crash before we can double back,
Yeah.
And I don't like thinking down this line, because I'm not one to think in big group generalities. I think you do need to sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
but like the way I'm wired and stuff like that is to put it on the individual.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what can we do? And those structures are so big there's a disconnect there of like what to do from like
an individual has
from
a
an
really hard
individual,
time making an impact on such a big structure.
Yeah. What do you think what powers do you think have abused their power in leadership?
I mean, most of them.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
This is another thing. I think most people agree on this, but I think then there's disagreement on what is actually the problem. And that may be where a first tackle is to actually get a consensus of who's the enemy, what's the problem we can band together and then fight for, because those benefiting from such a bad system want us to focus against each other, because then we don't focus at them.
Right.
And then nothing gets solved because we're just fighting each other.
Right.
And so then banding together to identify the target and then pursue. But then that means we have to have a consensus between each other, which would actually give a little bit more agency to the individual, which is like,
if you actually know who you're going against, or what you're actually trying to fight
within your friend group, and then within your familial level, get that settled first, and then from there branch out. You know, that gives a little bit more tack. Let's all get on the same page. There's more agency there.
A united group is, they're going to have an easier job tackling something big than just one person, with everybody else fighting different things. Yeah.
So I don't know where that leaves us,
I mean, in my opinion, I think a lot of the problems come from very wealthy folks with lots of power who can use their money to buy other folks, or to, buy their influence and buy their power, instead of actually like listening to people, or, like people supporting them based on their ideas and things, like not just based on money. I think money has a lot of power in our world, and that puts people into power who shouldn't necessarily be there. And like that money drives what they work for and who they work for, and the like problems that they're fighting against, or how they're working on fixing those problems. Like where the money is where those people are going to spend their time and put their effort. Like whatever people are paying them to do is what they're going to do. And so I think that from my perspective, money kind of has too much power over that. Like what actually needs to be fixed isn't always actually what's fixed.
So then, do you have a solution to that?
I mean, listen more to the people, but that's such like a broad statement. Like how do you actually get that to happen?
I think there's a big problem that money is not circulating enough, just in general.
Yeah.
I think there's pooling at the top. How to fix that is not clear to me right now.
Either.
I don't think exactly taxation's right. I don't think I have like an instinct towards like philanthropy incentivization. But yeah.
How do you actually get that to happen?
Yeah. And I don't think money's bad inherently.
No.
It's just how you use it.
Right. Yeah.
So, and it's like, how do you tackle that,
Especially when the people that have the money are the ones you're trying to like those are the people with power. So how do you fix that?
There's a chain between them and then Congress, and then that's where the regulations are.
Right.
And so there's a problem there. I wonder if like you can undercut that by working your way through the states levels and trying to purify those.
Turn it more back towards like smaller.
Which would be closer to your scope of practice than big government,
Yeah.
But that's still pretty far reaching.
Yeah.
But I think also just like truth in general has been abused.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where things that are either inaccurate or not solved yet are shown improperly.
Right. And then people just do with that what they
and then we go with that. And I mean, this is why we don't have a person spend fractions of their day in each sector of all of our businesses. We have devised in a way where a group of people take on those different domains of efforts to then connect to the other people, and there's a trust between those, that there's no tomfoolery between the two.
Right.
So that, because things are too complicated for you to do your 8-hour shift of nursing to then go and work on the plans to become an architect, you
Right,
know?
yeah.
Like, we have devised labor in this way, and that's where the trust comes in.
Yeah.
And then when people have abused that trust and have, it's like, what do you do?
Yeah.
You know? Because then it's left to the individual.
It's left to the individual
And I
to
keep coming to
discern
this-
truth and
yeah.
figure out what's right.
Yeah. And I keep circling back to that. And I don't know. I think like these things, this is why I like this kind of stuff, is talking about it. We'll do something. I feel like we're too airy right now. Like, we're too in the pie in the sky.
Yeah.
You know? And I think it's partly because there's so many things we could hit on, but then also they're all so charged that hitting on them is and we have I think we both have like a casual idea of what's the problem. We don't have a
very, it's not specific.
Yeah.
And like, how do you fix something so broad and vague? Like, you can't really.
Yeah. I think the better effort maybe would be, how do we set up proper families? Because that's been on my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
The like dynamics between males and females. And then, because from that, for most people, the goal is to then have a family.
Right. Right.
At least you would hope that's
Yeah.
everybody's minds, you know.
Yeah.
I'd be very concerned if that wasn't primary.
I think the two people in a relationship really need to agree with how they're going to raise a family, because if each parent is coming from very different directions, then, you know, that's very conflicting for the child, and they're not really going to know, and they're, you know, getting two very different sides of things. But I think that comes from, you know, more open communication within a relationship, and I think our society needs to do a better job of encouraging, like, healthy relationships that have good communication and talk things through. Because I think, I don't know, my parents aren't super great at communication. Like, something happens, my mom gets passive aggressive, my dad maybe apologizes, and then 2 days later it's gone, which, like, works for them. But, like, it didn't really teach me healthy communication, like, at all.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, we just need to encourage and, like, teach kids to have healthy communications and talk things through. But that comes from the parents, which comes from the parents. So it's a big cycle.
Yeah. What I think is interesting about it is it's a time where we don't need diversity. Because you don't want to be diverse in a two position decision making. You want to be homogenous to a certain extent, you know, which means, and these words get bad raps, but you need to be discriminatory, right?
Towards, like, each other's ideas?
Towards the person you're with.
Okay, yeah, you want someone who's on the same level. Yeah.
Yeah. Which that word is used overly so in a negative context, but to a certain extent, we do need to discriminate. I mean, you do that every day when you wake up and you say, I'm going to go to the pool instead of the gym. Like, that's a discrimination right there.
Yeah, you have to choose, and you have to like, know what your values are and pick for those, which would mean not choosing others.
Yeah, which means there are losers. You know, there's
Right.
people you don't choose.
Yeah.
And there's some people that don't own up to that, I feel like. And I hope that that's a very small minority, you know,
Yeah.
where you have to understand that judgments have to be made.
Yeah.
And that's in the metaphorical sense of a sword. It's very brutal because a sword decides where the split is, you know? And I think if more people, for one, knew how to sharpen their sword, but then also knew how to wield their sword.
Yeah.
And right now we're talking about like choosing people, but that works in many different forms.
I mean, you don't just choose like a partner, you choose friends, you choose a job, you choose who you're working. You choose all kinds of people.
Yeah. And that choosing is wielding that sword, you know. People use like the door thing, but it's no, you're literally cutting things
Yeah.
and destroying and creating.
Right.
At
You're
the same
choosing which
time.
relationships to foster. And then by
Mhm.
doing so, you're choosing which ones not to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't know. There's not a lot of serious thought paid to that, maybe.
Mm.
And I think that's partly on the. I think like when we were originally talking, it all goes back to education. I think that's a big issue, and I think there needs to be a organized attack on the school systems to make them better.
Yeah.
But then also almost an organized, and when I say attack, just attention put on familial structures as well.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of what a kid takes is from their family. Like school, you know, can teach values and things like that, but you learn a lot from your family because that's who you spend the most time with.
Mm-hmm.
And if your parents aren't teaching you things, whether that be chores, whether that be communication skills, I mean, then you're sent off into the world without those things. And you're just kind of supposed to find them on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Or just not. Like the kids in the story, they might not clean their bathroom. They might clean it like once every 2 months. And, you know, their parents, if they had taught them that at a younger age, maybe they'd clean their bathroom every week, you know?
How do you translate stuff like that to your life of almost having a second family? Because you had those neighbors.
Yeah, I kind of was odd. When I was younger, I spent a lot of time with my neighbors. And then in high school, I lived at my high school. Like, band was my life. And so I got a lot out of those other relationships where, like, my family didn't necessarily teach me communication and didn't necessarily teach me responsibility. I, again, found those things on my own. And I think a lot of that I learned being social from the family, but I learned responsibility and communication in band. Like, I had 0 hours and I had concerts and rehearsals like every night. Like, I was not home much. Mm-hmm. And, you know, in band, like, I think that's where I learned a lot of things. But you have to bring in your part ready, otherwise you're bringing the whole band down. And that taught me that I have to have my shit together. Like, if I'm a mess, then it looks bad on everyone. Like, the audience doesn't hear, man, that one bassoonist sucks. They just be like, oh, they're really out of tune. Like, so that teaches you responsibility. And I mean, that motivated me to do better. Like, because I wanted to sound good. I wanted to bring the band up. I wanted, you know, and I love my band director, but I wanted him to like me. Like, I cared a lot about what he thought. And so, like, that taught me motivation and responsibility. Whereas my parents didn't necessarily teach me those things. They wanted me to do well, but it wasn't necessarily like a sit down, like, Chelsea, you need to do this.
Do you think if things were set up more properly, that responsibility from school should come secondarily, and that responsibility would be first fed from the family?
I mean,
like, if things were well done, and
yeah,
they never are, but it's good to have something
a goal
to shoot for.
Right. I mean, I think it definitely should come from multiple areas in, like, people's lives. Like, my sisters aren't super motivated or responsible. My older sister's gotten better about it now that she lives on her own, but I think they could have definitely used from learning it from my parents, and they didn't really. And so, yeah, for people who aren't, like, super involved in school or things, where their home life is more of, like, an active part of their life, then, I mean, yeah, they need to learn it at home, or otherwise they're going to have to teach themselves, or they're not going to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the school thing is, and it depends on each school, but it's kind of opt-in. Yeah. Like, you opted in the band,
I chose band.
And then you took on responsibility. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the other way around. Mm-hmm. And so maybe it's more foolproof for more situations to have. I mean, like, it come from the family first.
Family life of some sort, no matter what it looks like for them. They have a home life, whether that be with people who are biologically their parents or not. Like, they still have a home life. There's still people around them. Everybody has that. Not everybody has band. Not everybody has sports. So, yeah, like, if it was more, everybody had, like, a decent home life that was going to teach them those things, then it would apply to a lot more people.
Mm-hmm. And you would hope that the small percentage would then get it from school when their home life is a wreck, you know?
Right.
But you would hope that the majority of people have that home life set up properly where they're getting it from their parents and then from the school and then maybe society after that, I think might come tertiary.
Like the real world.
Yeah. Well, like, because I had a similar thing where go to school and then, I mean, my band was during the day and then I took jazz band afterwards, but that was once a week. So it wasn't big. And then like sports after that was for me, you know, and I mean, you get done by, depending on the practice length, 6:37, back home, eat, homework, bed.
Right.
So it was like the same thing, you know? Yeah. So maybe that it works if you're the type of person to opt into that.
Right.
But then not everybody does. No. And I think the only other supplement to that is then a job.
Yeah.
I think.
I think getting a job from a young age, you learn responsibility and you have to show up on time and you're making your own money to make your own decisions with. And like at a job, you have expectations. Like if you don't do them, you're going to get fired.
Yeah.
And I think that teaches a younger person a lot too.
Yeah. Because I think that job is more like society then. It's that tertiary third thing.
Yeah.
Where you didn't, there's always some influence, but maybe like the family wasn't quite there. School's not quite there for you. Then you have job.
Right.
You know?
There's another chance.
And then it's like boom, boom, boom. And if you can't find something in one of those three, then there's other worries, I think, at play, you know? If you can't wind up in one of those three areas, then I think your development needs a little bit of maybe an assessment, to say the very least, you know? Yeah. And so then that puts like, I think it puts a lot of emphasis and some would say like blame on the family.
Yeah.
But I think that's what you want, right? Because you want
parents
like
to do a good
why
job.
Yeah. Why do you want to have a family and not then have control, you know? Why make a kid and then
raise them poorly
and then not hands off almost to the sense that like the school has to or society has to, which you hope it's society from the angle of a job and not from the angle of prison.
Yeah.
You know? And I think as you go out through that hierarchy, if you will, the likelihood that things straighten out properly is lower every time.
Right.
Because, I
mean, it's usually later in life and you never know where someone's going to end up working.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think people really need to think through whether they're ready to be parents before deciding to have kids, because sure, like having a baby sounds great, but that's like 18 years plus stuff, like, you know, but like 18 years of them living with you and you teaching them morals and values and things. And it's not easy. And like people really need to think through how they're hoping to parent their kids and what they're going to try to teach their kids and, you know, good habits and things to instill in their kids. But I don't know if a lot of people really, really think that through before they have kids. And like, if you're not really ready to have kids, then how are you supposed to like actually raise them correctly?
Your fourth C-section.
No, no, absolutely not. Very wrong. I'll take a quick rest.
Yeah.
I was a C-section. There it is.
You were?
Yeah, but that's it. No more C-section.
Another thing they touched on that I thought was interesting was the balance between your own ambition and your loved ones, which is like how, because for him, obviously he was fulfilled in everything he's doing, which was at a high level of functioning, it seemed like. But then when you go to, there's a line I saw somewhere that somebody was talking to the mere mortals of like normal people. When like one of them is your 9-year-old, you know, it's also dependent on like whether they should be at that level or not, or they chose that they don't want to be. And I think that also just goes on to like the idea in general that more people just have to be okay with people not in their inner circle, but outer circle doing things that they don't approve of, but are still within the scope of it's not harming others, so let's just let them do it,
So,
you know?
Yeah.
And then I think that's why it's tricky with like what's currently going on with like the abortion discussion, because some people would define it as harming others.
Right.
And then others would describe it as not being able to do it, harming themselves, which would still be harming an other.
Right, another.
And I think that's why that issue is particularly tricky.
Right.
You know?
Because, if on other arguments you're telling people to just kind of stay in their own lane, do what affects you, like, if you don't necessarily like what other people doing are, but it's not hurting other people, leave it alone. People do take abortion as hurting other people, whether it be one way or the other. But so it's really hard to come up to a consensus when it does impact other people.
Yeah, which is why I think it has to be a state's issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, personally. For one, like, it's just from a legal perspective, Roe v. Wade is unconstitutional. You know, leave that as it is. And then that overturning it would just leave it up to the state's issue. And then it's 50 different decisions on how to deal with it.
Yeah.
You know? And that's what's like broad strokes cool about the in general like state system is we have 50 different test models.
Yeah.
Technically. So there's going to be a lot of similarities, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this.
Yeah.
I think if you left it up to the states, there would be a lot of people who are going to get screwed. And I personally, I don't know, think that helping others is really important. And if we have the ability to help those people and not just be like, well, it's up to their state and just kind of let the, like, I don't like the idea of just like letting those people be screwed. And I personally don't feel like that's the correct way to go about it, just because there's so many people who are just, you know, like their lives are going to be changed forever. Like, I don't know. I think it just leaves a lot of people out and lets them get hurt.
I think defining it is crucial in this, and I'm going to be from now on speaking in the broad generality and not on the occasion of a complication that the mother or baby might die or that it was a case of rape.
Yeah.
So just in general, the person did make a decision, you know, and they took that agency and this is what they found.
Yeah.
I think if like, and that's like, if I was to speak one-on-one with somebody, I wouldn't dog on them if they chose either way, just to be clear. But then at the same time, if I look at it in how reality is going to play out, there's still going to be mail-ordered pills. There's still going to be traveling done. There's still going to be other methods, even if you're in a state that does not allow it.
Yeah.
So I take that into account, I guess.
Yeah. But then it costs more, and then it can be done unsafely, or these people can get hurt, and I don't know. That, to me, doesn't feel right. Like, yes, these people made a decision, and in my opinion, sexual education and birth control and things like that need to be more accessible and more encouraged, so that way that decision can be made in an informed way. But, like, these people are still going to be getting abortions, and there's just a greater risk for them to get hurt doing so, and that doesn't necessarily feel right to me either.
Yeah. Well, like, it's easy to like say it's not right.
Yeah.
But like, reality itself is not right.
Yeah.
So it's to me a soft argument, and I don't want to discredit sticking up for people.
Yeah.
But I think that's why partially that side of the table is losing right now, is because it's done from a very soft argument stance. I think, and this is where, like, now we're into something kind of specific. I think especially like the authorities or leaders on that side of the table, if they took it seriously enough, they could come up with some really good reasons. I believe they're out there.
Yeah.
I don't think we hear them enough. I think there's real, like, obviously sticking up for people is good,
Yeah.
but it's a soft argument. You know, it's like sticking on the corner with a sign that says poverty's bad. It's like, yes, but this is a lot more complex, and it would be a lot easier to win the war, especially if you're on that side, if you armed yourself with better arguments.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something we're missing from a lot of our leaders if you take it to other domains. But since we're in this, like in general, I feel like both sides could be strong holding this a lot easier. I think if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't think you're wrong necessarily. It's on a belief, so it's almost fictitious until proven, but I believe there's better arguments out there.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are.
I just wish the leaders would take their responsibility and show them to us, you know, because then it would be easier for me to get on your side, and then the other side would have to stronghold their stuff if they even could. And then it's an actual real.
It's an actual debate.
It's a real war. It's a real discussion. It's a real talk of like, how do we handle this?
Right.
Which is the other reason why I think like I don't let it overturn, because then we'll have all these 50 different test cases, you know, and hopefully out of that we actually see some shining examples of what to do, because even if you say pro-choice, there's not a clear of like where the line is when you get into the dirty details and stuff like that, you know? And so then to like try to make that a national law, even though we don't have the details worked out, to me, if you take that to any issue, is a problem with me. Yeah. Because I like to have all the details ironed out, especially if we're going to the national level, you know? Like I like to have as many details outlined in every level, you know, myself and moving out. And if it's national is affecting a lot of people,
right? And if it's kind of vague,
I want the leaders from that side that are going to try to have this law, whatever it looks like, go through, to have that actually well thought. Yeah. And I don't think it's well thought right now. You know? Yeah. That's some of my, I guess, criticism of it. But it goes to both sides where it's not well thought. I think in this particular one, it's an uphill battle just with how the Constitution is structured. Yeah. Where it's not an easy, yes, it's constitutional. Right. And then, yeah.
Yeah. It's a tricky one. There's a lot that needs to be thought through.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see where it goes. That's for sure.
But then it's like, this is where we come to an obstacle. Because I'm more, let's say, in the center, and then you're more on that side, tilting to that side. And it's where, like, if this was more readily available within this thought, you could probably convert me if you had a good, strong argument, you know, like legitly. Yeah. And then I'd be curious what the other side would try to badger that down with. And then at some point, it's an actual discussion, like we were saying, you know. But then this is where, like, I think as individuals we get stuck is...
It's very much belief focused right now.
Yes.
Which makes it hard, because you're not arguing hard facts. You're arguing individual beliefs and what you believe is correct and what is incorrect, which makes it hard to have like a hard discussion where you're deciding for such a broad scale, like what is right and wrong. Yeah.
And I think I got it from like a right-leaning Talking Points video, but they were like, this is only going to make like a 10% change when it's overturned, which in the grand scheme isn't that big, you know, especially if you're on the right side hoping this gets shot down. In my head, I'm like, it's not as big as a wind as we're making it out to be, you know, if I'm on that right side. And so I heard that and I'm like a little bit more okay with it being overturned because, like I said, the details aren't ironed out. So then, and if you look at like actual waves of change, it's not, there's big waves of change, don't get me wrong, but then at the same time it's not as big as like a 10% decrease or whatever. I forget the exact thing I saw, you know, to be more like we're still deciding this. And I think to be in that deciding area, we have to overturn it.
Yeah.
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 And I'm just speaking from a legal
Right.
perspective.
Right.
Like, we have to uphold the law
Right.
of our Constitution.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. And I think this is like, I don't know, a thought I'm having right now is if we could get more people to the point of like, I don't know, maybe, I don't want to make myself as a model, but to the point of like actually questioning these things on both sides and being like, I'm going to be undecided until you actually give me good information,
Right.
you know? And I think if more people could stick that, and because like you're always going to get, however you want to split it, the 30% of the extremists are always going to vote yes on each side.
Right.
So the battle is really
It's the
in the
middle
center,
ground.
you know? And so I think if we could have a well-informed and well-fortified center, that would make the outer bits have to fortify their ideologies a little
Arguments are
better
stronger.
to then hopefully convert some, you know?
Right.
Because the easy one is the moral
Yeah.
of like, you're killing babies, you're destroying a life, you're destroying a woman's life, you're destroying a woman's rights, instead of like just giving me actual rationale instead of a emotional talking point.
Right. Yeah, morals are really hard to argue. You need like hard science behind it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that applies to a lot of things in life. Like you were saying, like the two extremes. Like when it comes to politics, we have two very hard extremes, but it's the ones in the middle who actually decide. 'Cause, you know, like you have a relatively even split, and then there's the people in the middle who have to be debated and like have to be one to either side of the argument. And yeah, that's true of like politics as a whole in our country. But yeah, if more people in the middle, like you have to have stronger arguments to win those people over. And people weren't just like one-sided and like only saw their side. They'd have to like actually be one with like hard facts.
Yeah. What do you think can be done in general with all these things?
I mean, I think people need to be educated, and they need to be educated from, you know, reliable sources. Like I think news systems today are very corrupt, I guess, and very one-sided, and they're very biased and only report their side of things. And people need to be educated on, you know, finding a good news source, but also like looking at a news source and knowing that it's biased and being able to like find that bias and, you know, knowing how to take that and look at it in a way that's like, okay, this is what this person's saying, this is why they're saying it, here's the hard fact, and here's what I make of that hard fact, not the bias. But so people need to realize that and like go find good sources and know how to look at the sources that are biased.
Do you think life was better 50 years ago, 100 years ago, whatever, when it was a mainstay at every dinner table to not talk about politics and religion? Or do you think it's better now that things are politicized?
I mean, in my perspective, like, I'm a woman. I wouldn't have been like involved at all in those things. So, like, I'm very grateful that it's a discussion and that I get to be involved in that. And like, I think those discussions are really important for giving, you know, people's voices, making sure like everybody's voices are heard. And, you know, 100 years ago, I wouldn't really have a say in that. And so I don't, you know, like to me, I think it's really important to have those discussions.
I guess I'm not trying to speak on the opportunity of women, but more the, in personal matters, we don't speak about these two topics. That's more what I'm trying to get at.
Okay. So assuming I always had the
assuming
right,
that the opportunity was always
Okay.
there.
I mean, I think the discussion of these topics allows people to make better educated decisions about them, which I think is really important to hear other people's perspectives in order to make, you know, a decision that's well informed and well thought through, instead of something you just like thought about yourself and didn't necessarily bounce off of other people. Religion or politics, I think discussion of it's important in order to like make those well-educated decisions.
It seems to me though that like if it becomes like an all or nothing type thing where instead of it's like, what am I trying to connect it to? It's like there's this both party agreement that we're just not going to touch these ideas, and then maybe somewhere else they get talked about. But it's almost this anxiety is what I'm picturing of stepping into a dinner party and hoping something doesn't get brought up, because then somebody might feel the need to defend it, and then somebody else feels the need to correct it.
Yeah.
You know, because when these discussions actually play out and on a large scale, they're not as formal as what you described.
Yeah.
You know?
They're not very pretty.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, during an election a couple years ago, like we had a family party and we had a sign on the door, "Don't talk politics tonight," because you don't. Yeah. I think that these discussions are important in an environment where everybody respects and listens to each other. But yeah, like a family dinner, it's tricky because it gets yelly, and like people aren't always respectful of other people's opinions, and then they attack their feelings or them, and then it's not an actual beneficial discussion. But so I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that, you know, healthy discussions where people actually listen to each other are important, but, you know, sloppy conversations where people, you know, aren't necessarily being healthy about it, those aren't great. But how do you find the balance? Like, how do you encourage healthy discussions?
Yeah. Respect is definitely there. Yeah. And I don't know, that itself, being able to say I don't know, I think is needed more.
Yeah.
And that being fine. This whole idea of silence is violence is a problem, I think. Because it's not good to have an opinion on everything. Yeah. Because then once you get out of your scope of practice, you're
uninformed on something.
You're uninformed then. So this whole thing that if you're silent on a subject, especially a quote unquote human rights subject, you being quiet on that issue is only going to perpetuate things. Who's to say that their opinion is not going to perpetuate some other evil or the same evil?
They could go either way.
Yeah. You know? So I have a problem with that idea. Yeah. You know? And then the opposite of the silence is just bandwagoning all the time.
Right. Having an opinion but not being informed about it.
Yeah. And that kind of connects back to the abortion stuff. Not saying you're bandwagoning, but it's a idea of like...
I mean, I made my decision for myself. And I mean, my whole family is pro-life. Like, my decision was made by me. So I wouldn't say that I personally am bandwagoning, but there definitely are people who are.
Yeah. But do you think this might be too personal, but do you think it's a little bit of a problem that you don't know anything beyond an emotional argument for it?
No, because I think emotions are important, and like, you can't be completely heartless in government. Like, you can't be, because that just fucks a lot of people over, and I don't support that. So I think you and I disagree about like how much emotion should play in things. I think there should be harder facts for both sides, but I don't think me like using emotion in my decision is necessarily a bad thing. But that's just my take.
I think it should have a minority of the decision.
Yeah, I think there definitely needs to be more hard facts and things, but for some, I don't know. I don't think it's such a bad thing.
Okay. Not necessarily my opinion, but somebody on the other side would say that it's very convenient to use feelings and what somebody else is going through as an argument in this particular subject, because the life is not taken into account of the words they would use of the person being murdered in this situation.
And I mean, we've talked about this. I'm not pro-abortion.
I know. But to say,
but there are emotions.
I'm
on both
thinking
sides.
about people's emotions,
There
but
are
then
people
there's
on both sides. Yeah.
Which then, like, it undermines the emotion argument almost itself.
Yeah.
In this particular issue, you know.
Yeah. And
so then
on
you're
a
left.
broad scale, I think that the emotion shouldn't be used to, defend either side. That's just my personal opinion on it. Like, that's why I believe what I believe, but I don't think that should be used to make the decision of a whole nation. Like, I think there does need to be like hard science, but that's why I have made the decision I have made. I know that's not enough to defend a whole argument for the whole nation, but that's where I come from.
Yeah.
As an individual.
Yeah. Tying back into what we were talking about earlier, though, and let me know if this is getting too personal, but the best agency we have is within ourselves. So wouldn't you want that opinion and that decision to be reflective of what you want to see towards your inner circle of family and friends, but then farther out, stretching to the state and government?
I mean, of course you want things to be like decided on rationally, but sorry.
You're good.
I mean, yeah, you want to make decisions rationally, like for yourself, and then those around you to do the same. But we all pick and choose what arguments are, the strongest to us. Like, whether it's fact or not, like, some facts are going to stick harder with some people than they are with others. And that, doesn't make it necessarily, like, the other fact, like, a bad argument. It just, people take things differently. Even if it's a hard fact, like, people are going to interpret that. I don't know.
Looking at it in a binary would be disingenuous. It's just a stronger argument.
Yeah. Like, you mean the fact is...
It's not the fact. My position is not that listening to feelings are bad. It's that listening to rationale is stronger.
Right. And I agree it should be both.
And more reinforced. And so I guess what I'm getting at is why not try to tilt your decision more towards that than the emotion, and then you would say, well, that's because that's just what I chose and how it felt to me. And I would say, don't you want that, though, to reflect how the government would decide?
Yeah.
Because it trickles from the individual to the government.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where I'm trying to dig into.
Yeah.
If that's okay.
I mean, I think it should be a balance and that rationale and, not necessarily emotions, but like the morals behind it. I think they both have a big say in it. And you would, hope that people are making rational decisions. But I think that feeling has a play in that too. Like, morals do have a play in that. If we were going just on hard fact, like, it'd be a pretty hard place to live. And like, from how I see it. And I think that morals and caring about other people is really important in making the world a decent place, and not just necessarily like irrationally, this is more productive and like more, I don't know, more productive, I guess. Yeah. I think that morals and like caring about other people is important in making the world a decent place, and not just a like most productive or, things like that. Because rationally, like, caring about other people is kind of silly, and take care of yourself, like, but I think that morals are important in making the world a decent place to live.
This connects to something my head's been in lately, of what is good rationale, and good rationale is the best rationale. And then what is the best rationale? And the best rationale is self-referential. It's meta, I think, because then it's something that not only speaks the facts, but then takes into account what facts would deem like highest well-being. So it's almost like, and this is a word I think I've brought it up a couple of times on the cast at this point, but a word I'm trying to figure out is like, it's something like meta competence, or meta, because the meta part is self-referential, and I think that's a very important part of it, or meta rationale, where it's a rational point of view that takes into account the well-being. Is something that's my
Combines. Yeah.
Because it divulges the emotional ideas of the person, I think, wielding it, which I think is very has a lot of utility to it, if that makes sense.
So like taking the emotion out of it, kind of, in a way, or
It
making it less emotional, but still taking into like consideration those things.
I think I'm building it out, and I'm getting closer as the more I bring it up, but I think what it does is it separates the emotional connection from the wielder and the sword, and almost allows the sword to have its own personality, and then therefore emotions. And I know this is super heady, but then because the sword itself is the decision maker, and it lives itself within reality itself because it decides, then the only things that come from it is good.
Yeah. Okay. I can see what you're saying.
Because the best I can connect to this right now is I was reading a lot of studies today on like social role theory on how gender differences are. And feminist extremists would say that we have all these wage gap problems and personality differences and stuff like that because of our social roles that are inbred at us from our culture itself. And then you would take that thought further and think that, okay, then the more equal and egalitarian a society is, the better it is, or the lesser those differences between males and females exist. But then you see the opposite. You see them increase. And within those cultures, you see higher rates of well-being, and at the same time, higher rates of those differences. And so what I'm trying to connect
The
is
differences being between
personality, occupational choice. There's a whole list of different things, and they're all varying when you get into them, but there's differences, even down to like blood pressure they measure, and there's differences there. And lifespan, we know, and all that kind of stuff.
Right. And you're saying those differences increase when
the society is more egalitarian.
Okay.
And so trying to connect this back is, if you see what's contrary to what we think we should strive for, which is to decrease these differences, what these studies show is that if we tried to decrease them, for one, we'd be most likely going against our own evolution, which is the better theory that's at play here, arguably. So then there would be some sort of force that would have to be applied, which would be towing close to totalitarian, depending on how it's structured, where instead you could allow males and females to do what they do, and then you just see these differences arise.
Yeah.
And from that, you see higher rates of well-being. And so it takes out that emotional argument from that. It's commonly the feminist, especially a feminist extremist perspective. It severs that because most people, the majority of people in academics are on the left.
Yeah.
So these studies were most likely done by people that were most likely hoping for the opposite reaction.
Right.
And so what's cool, in a sense, is that they wielded the sword.
Yeah.
And once the decision was made, it's actually, we would be happier if we had more differences.
Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to connect back to. Where, and I guess like that's where proper science is doing its best work. Maybe that's the sword itself, you know? And then maybe trying to tie it back into this abortion stuff is maybe we just need more strong science on the whole thing. Maybe they're
more research done with less biases.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, goes back to the whole like thing we were talking about earlier about like people being educated, making decisions about people like need to find non-biased sources. Like science needs to be done in a way that's not done to prove one side or the other. It's just done. And whatever the results are the results, and they're non-biased, and that's what came out, and that's what it supported, but it wasn't intended to prove one side or the other.
So I had a thought on this the other day. I talked about it with Jesse, but I have like different ideas that kind of connect to the same idea of like a cultural shift in general. But what I was telling Jesse was I was watching a YouTube video about two, I think, PhD guys talking about some health and exercise studies. I forget the exact context, but it doesn't matter, because as they were like talking about the title and then who's authoring it, they were talking about the authors as if they were like NFL all-stars, which I thought was really cool. Because what if we like held those positions to the same account we do as like athletes,
right,
or even like politicians, you know, because a lot of people make a lot of bets on hopefully politics will make their life better, which is not right. And I think, as we said, education is a better way out. And then we're always trying to gather more information. And so then steel manning the people that gather those information and make them into our superheroes, our superstars, would be really cool.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, you get together on a Sunday and wait for the new research paper to drop and read it with your friends. Right? Like it's the same thing we do with sports. It's just, it's not as visually appealing.
No,
you know?
There's not like a TV show to go watch.
Yeah.
There's less beer and less wings, but
I mean, you still have beer and wings.
go have an academic discussion with some beer. Yeah, hell yeah. I mean, I was in a plant systematics class this last semester, and I didn't love the professor overall, but he did a really good job of like referencing his sources and telling us who wrote the paper that he was referencing and where he got his material and who said what. And like, you could see the repeated figures. Like this researcher, you could see them like throughout a time period. And we each did like a research paper, and mine was on like a specific plant family. And a lot of it was, you know, a lot of the papers and stuff throughout like a 30-year time period were done by the same guy. So like, if I actually went in and like looked at who this guy was, you know, as like an individual researcher, then I would know more about like what I was reading and like where he was coming from.
Yeah.
But I really liked that he like referenced all of the authors and actually who he was citing.
I think though that you would hope that the person's studying their personal background would not matter to the research.
Not. But yeah, you would hope that they were doing good research.
You could draw lines from like their childhood or whatever and why they chose the study.
Yeah, I mean,
but you would not.
I mean it more to know that they were doing good research, not necessarily like what their beliefs are and where they're from, but like to know that they're doing good research and that they're qualified to be doing the research they're doing.
And the checks and balances are in place for said research, because I'm all for if we had one scientist producing all the papers, if it was humanly possible to do such a thing, even if he was a straight white dude, even if then all the checks and balances were in place, that proper science was at play.
Right.
I think that's maybe what connects back to this idea, is that the science hopefully will disconnect whatever those emotions are. And then when they're not, we have the checks and balances in place to let you know. To
actually see the science.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a cool thing of these people you can find online where they're jacked PhDs, basically. They're dudes that study health and exercise science, but they're not the traditional academic look, you know, of pencil thin and glasses and all that nerdiness, you know. They're jacked. They can deadlift for reps 600 pounds. Yeah. And then also tell you about different molecular chemistry within the body for health and exercise. Yeah. I think that's really cool in multiple different ways, you know? Like, there was a Joe Rogan episode where they had 3 dudes on talking about different things with diet stuff, and it was very interesting. But then also just to listen, like, you have their voices, but then to listen, and it's just three gorilla dudes, talking, and you wouldn't think that they have something intellectual to say.
Right.
And then they're talking about all kinds of chemistry that most people don't even need, but they're going through the dirty details of it. And it's really cool, and it's almost, you could have watch parties around things like that between conversations of academics, which would actually be more visually appealing.
Yeah.
And so, and they were talking about how they kind of inspired a lot of these drug-free young naturals, which is really cool, where they're hearing the science, some kids, and then they are also putting it in place in the gym.
Right.
Yeah. And my background is health and exercise, so that's where I tilt, and it's easier for me to find patterns. But and this is where we need people from other domains and the leaders of other domains to figure out these things and connect them together so that we can find these actual leaders, like these guys talking are actually leaders, because there's times in that interview where they say, I don't know.
Yeah,
like the research is not decided,
it's not there yet. Yeah.
Which is so important, especially coming from a scientist,
Especially if like your goal is to, lead other people, you have to be willing to say like when the answer is not there.
Yeah.
So you don't want to give people faulty information.
Yeah. There's another part I had to it, but it doesn't connect well right now. Well, I said a future of cultured young people who are drug-free, educated athletes and who are bringers of good, wielding the capitalist sword.
That's a thought right there. Yeah.
Well, to me, it seems like capitalism is the only economic system that's working right now, is I think where that was coming from. So I was trying to have something all-encompassing.
Right. Covered all aspects of it.
Yeah, because there you have like personal health, but then all kinds of things are wrapped up into that. And I don't know what that takes. Every time I say that, I just go back to like, what can you do? Which is like influence the people around you.
Right. Have these discussions.
Yeah. Have these discussions, but like, yeah. So it'd be nice to find more people. And it's tough because then it's like domain specific, where you need more people within your particular field. And then it's cool because a representative from those groups could meet with somebody from plants, and you guys can go over different things and cross-pollinate, which ties in well. Yeah. Like I dream of, have a lot of visions. Yeah. Like I dream of a big cultural shift like this,
Yeah. I mean, in the plant world, it's kind of tricky because there's not a whole lot of botanists here. So those conversations are far and few between. But I love them. I love like when I find like a fellow plant enthusiast and we can like sit down and like actually talk about things, or like going on a hike with like other plant people and they're like, oh, look, it's this exact plant. And I'm like, oh my God. Like I love those conversations. And yeah, I just, I wish that they happened more.
Yeah. This connects to another vision I have of like that video I showed you. Do you know Gary Vaynerchuk well?
No.
The guy that had that on and everything. He's an entrepreneur, but he's like big of like everybody should have their own micro brand and social media enterprise is one thing he talks about a lot of things, but that's one thing. And I think I really believe that, where I think there's so many things going wrong right now. And I think if you got to the flip side of so many things going right, I think one thing I envision is something like that of what we were just talking about, but then also almost many people having their own podcasts, where in the future this is something that morphs, before it was radio and it was this, but something where 90% of like the episodes you would produce were the down and dirty details of plants. And then that 10% of episodes was the one you would give me as an outsider to then look in and get enough information to casually see. Right. And then you would still have a small population of actual listeners that would listen to 100% of it. Right. And that's where there would be a cool education and cross-pollination process where I
People
could
can become
listen to
educated about
something.
other things.
Yeah, where you could do one episode with another expert,
Right.
and I could get all that I needed
Enough to
from my
take to your
perspective.
field.
And then I could do my own part of making my own episode, and everybody can almost do that. And it'd be all these micro things. And we kind of talked about this earlier of like a free streamlined like educational process of these things would be all free, and then if you had a free market of ideas of people upvoting and downvoting things, then the best podcasts would come up, and then best people would show and all that.
Right.
That's another thing I
we talked about
envision.
that.
You know, that's it. This is in a different context because we were talking about like, I don't know, like a business around it, but this is just like, it'd be so cool.
Yeah.
Because it's more like free market and just people doing it. Like you would do it if you really found enough people to have 100 episodes of like 90 down dirty plant stuff. And then 10 of like casual episodes people could tune into, you know?
Yeah.
And then of those 10,
the best one,
they fight somebody else's 10 and then both of you have 3 and there's a competition of real ideas, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to people having discussions like this, people communicating and talking about things.
Like me and Jesse have had like a 4-part discussion now on the abdominals. Yeah. Where it's hard to settle these things. Like you would think we could have a consensus on one muscle group of the body, and me and him couldn't even figure that out, you know? And this is where we need each other because I'm talking to him, he's talking to his teacher, getting back to me, and all this kind of stuff. Because then one thing that I heard today that was really good was like, science is never founded. It's just the best idea of a thing we have.
It's supported, not.
Yeah. And so let's get these foundations that we think are good and then build off them. And then when things switch, when different theories, not even theories, different things we thought to be true are proven wrong, have the mental and emotional fortitude to understand like, okay, then we what if evolution was disproven? Like we just have to move on
then
from that, right?
Figure out what was happening.
Yeah.
My mycology class that I'm taking right now, it's not like a super big field. There's not a whole ton of research in it, and it's all changing like quickly. And so yesterday we got our textbook, and she's like, yeah, it's from 2017. But even that, like a lot of it's wrong. And so, you know, I'm going to say things that are different from the textbook, and the textbook's going to say things that are different from me. And you guys are going to go do research. You're going to find things that's different to what I'm saying, and I want you to tell me so I can correct it. And like, you know, I like that approach that she's willing to say like the textbook's wrong, I'm wrong. You know, just like it's a field that's changing really rapidly. And addressing that. Yeah.
And yeah, like knees over toes guy Ben Patrick, he talked about how he's very gifted and he really enjoys this particular side of like health and exercise. And he would take tests in his college and having to decode questions of, is this what the textbook wants or was actually at play now these days with consensus?
Right.
And sadly that was, the tests were poisoned itself, you know? Yeah. If only we had more teachers, and I think that's also leadership not being taken up properly. That was leadership done well, you know? Yeah.
My professor last semester, who I didn't like mostly, who did like the good citations and stuff, he would teach us something and be like, this is how it was done 20 years ago, but it's not what's done today. And then he'd move on and he wouldn't teach us what was done today. And it made me so mad. Yeah. Like, you are teaching me outdated science and you're testing me on it, but you're not taking the time to teach me what is done. And that was one of my bigger problems with him. Yeah. Is that he just stuck to his outdated things. And he would address that it was outdated, but he wouldn't tell us what was current. Yeah. I was like, dude, that's not setting me up for success in this field.
Which at least he addressed it, because some people would just play it.
They just move on.
But it's like going to a film school and then teaching about disposable cameras and the red rooms and stuff like that. It's like, we are way past that on a film level these days.
You're not setting me up for success in this field because I know about these things from the 80s. And that is not going to help me today, which is, frustrating. And at least he told us, but He was an interesting character.
Mm-hmm. I'd still say at least he like fesses up to it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Because then you can do your own research,
Right.
which is helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. At
Takes
least I know
more
not
work.
to like rely on that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like the problem in general of like you're paying regardless of the type of the quality of teacher you're getting. And so that almost opens a conversation of like, should that dynamic be a little different?
Yeah. I mean, he's like a world-renowned researcher. Like, that's why CSU pays him.
Yeah.
And he's like an editor for the National Journal of Botany. Like, he's up there, but he should not be a professor.
Yeah.
Like, he's fantastic and does really great work for the field, but he should not be a professor.
No, I think that's an important distinction. Or he should improve his professing abilities.
Yeah.
Right?
He needs to work on it. And he does take feedback well. He just doesn't necessarily, like, actually take it, like, put it into his lessons. Like, he'll sit with you and discuss things, but he has a hard time actually, like, putting it into his lectures.
Yeah. And I think that's another problem of how it's structured is that some professors take the class just for the research money and stuff like that instead of the love of teaching.
Yeah. I did a job shadow with somebody before coming to CSU, and she was a researcher, and she's like, yeah, I teach, like, a class on the side. She's like, yeah, they asked me to, like, go in and teach sometimes. And at the time, I was like, okay, cool, because I was doing a job shadow for the research. Like, I wasn't touring the school or anything. But looking back, I'm like, oh, she's who's teaching these classes, and she does not care about those classes.
Yeah.
She doesn't care what she's teaching these students.
We watched The Machine the other day, and his Spanish teacher needed the 14 people, not Spanish, Russian teacher. And so he had to stay in, didn't learn any Russian in 2 years of college, and had a great story for it. But
the professor was very corrupt and should not have been doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's not even like the professor, it's just the system should not be that way of like...
He shouldn't have gone through that many years and not learned anything. Yeah.
We still got a good story from it.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
True.
But, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another problem of like... Things being fucked up is fun.
Yeah, it's funny.
Like it adds a story. And I don't know if like if there was this reality where we figured everything out. The only thing I can think of we'd have left is just the tragedy of life. And then there's some story in that, but then a lot is taken out.
Human injury. Like, but there's not
natural disaster and disease.
But there's not necessarily like politics or unfortunate like experiences with other people to laugh at.
Yeah. I don't know if like we just become charged as a planet and then find problems in space. I don't know if that's what takes place, you know, or exactly like what is actually solved, you know. But yeah. I don't know if there's maybe a better thought to have is there's no end to having trouble.
Yeah, I would say I don't really think a utopia is attainable.
Yeah.
At least anytime with near our lifetime. Like, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. And I don't know.
I think you're right. Trying to bring it back to reality because, like...
And everybody's perspective of utopia is different, too. Which would always lead to change.
Leads to a disagreement. I have two thoughts, but I want to go down the other one. Do you know... How do you feel about capitalism?
I have mixed opinions. In the past, I would have been like, boo, I hate capitalism. But, I mean, now I'm like actually living in it, you know? Like I actually have to like pay my rent and make my own money. Yeah. And so...
And that has made you more appreciative of it?
Not necessarily appreciative. Like, I still don't love it. But I'm not just like, man, that sucks. You know, like, it does give people the opportunity to get out of situations and stuff. But we've kind of talked about this. I think it takes a lot out of a person, and like working a 9 to 5 and doing nothing afterwards kind of crushes you. And like you have, like, obviously you work, but you make the decision to go do things that make you happy. But a lot of people don't make that decision, and they're just kind of like crushed by it. And they're just, you know, They go work a 9 to 5. That means nothing to them. They come home to an unfulfilling like home life. They go to sleep. They wake up. They go to work. They repeat. The weekends, they clean the house. They maybe hang out with their kids. They go to sleep and they go back to work. And it's just like this cycle. And I think capitalism continues that. And I don't love that. But then there are people who make the choice like, okay, I'm working 9 to 5, but tonight I'm going kayaking. And Saturday I'm going on a hike. And so...
So then capitalism kind of facilitates that.
I just don't know of a better way to do it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't love capitalism, but I don't know a different way that would work better. So I'm kind of like, well...
It's the best we got.
Right. And
You
so
know?
I don't think it's great, but I don't know what would be better.
Mm-hmm. Do you think possibly... Here's a thought. We actually struck... This is not necessarily my opinion, but we struck gold with it so well that we devised a system that mimics the state of reality where that it is unfair. And therefore, at broad scales, the better systems have to be unfair.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Potentially.
Because then when you try to go down the opposite argument, which is a more equal spread of all resources by force almost, it hasn't worked, you know? And so then you're like, what's the other option?
Yeah. I just wish it wasn't so draining and that it let people pursue like what they wanted to. Because the way our society is set up, like there's a lot of desk jobs where people go in and they like punch numbers all day, but that's not really fulfilling to them. And I wish that, you know, our society supported more people doing things that they wanted to do, and like people be entrepreneurs more, and like smaller businesses, or like things that actually made them happy and not just sitting on a desk all day. And that's just kind of how our society has it set up. And I just wish that that wasn't true.
Yeah. Do you think that... I agree. I think there's a tricky balance between allowing enough and too little opportunity.
Yeah.
That's the balance, I think. And I think maybe we have the best chance at striking that balance under this structure, you know?
Yeah.
I think like we both connected to when things pool at the top, it's not good for
Right.
the majority of people, at least.
Right.
Or you could argue anybody,
Yeah.
you know? It's like what to do about that is
Yeah.
something we're trying to figure out. But then also, like, the Matthew principle, what's it? Do you know that principle? There's another word for it. It starts with a P. I had it in my brain 5 minutes ago. But it's, why it's nicknamed the Matthew principle is the biblical verse of, for those that have everything, more will be given, and those who have nothing, more will be taken. And it's this idea that when you look at any human creative enterprise, there's an uneven distribution by nature. And you can take it to human creative enterprises, but then also like the amount of mass in stars. Like it seems like it's the structure of reality itself.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's just like, that's why you see this uneven distribution, is that no matter what, if you let everything start equal, at some point things are going to pool.
Yeah.
And so I guess it's figuring out a mechanism that lets that pooling drain. And that's another thing we haven't found a strong argument for. We have arguments, but I haven't seen them strong, at least. But that's another tough principle, because then I think if we solve that, I don't know, because you don't want to devalue getting better.
Right. You
and
want
moving
people to
up.
work hard and, you know, at least try to get better, like on their own. But when all the resources are stuck at the top, can they really do that?
It makes it harder.
Yeah. So you need to find a balance of, you know, like you said, draining the pools a little bit so that way it's attainable for these other people, but you still want to keep that desire and that passion to like do better in the world.
Mm-hmm. I would say it makes it harder, but never impossible.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Which it's another tricky balance of when things are very hard, they're more rewarding, you know?
But they're also demoralizing.
Yeah. But at a certain point, there's going to be winners and losers as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, what do you do about that? You know?
You know, what do you do with the people who lost?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, just by the way of transacting things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would imagine that even if we had everybody good in our country, I think the only way that possibly could be facilitated is possibly stealing it from another country.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's all checks and balances. There has to be, or it's something where we're in now where we've just accumulated a debt to pay for everything, but everything's kind of fake money almost.
Yeah.
You know? So it's either we got it from somewhere else or we imagined it.
Yeah.
The imagination's going to crash in on us at some point, and then getting it from somebody else is then still a moral
you have to deal
problem.
with that someday too.
Yeah.
Like if you build up debt, either you're going to have to deal with it or your kids are going to have to deal with it, but it doesn't just go away.
Mm-hmm.
Like you still took that from somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you drain the pool by still incentivizing the people at the bottom to get better?
Right.
And then the people that get better, if there's somebody that gets better, there's somebody that's getting worse.
Yeah. Because they're getting those resources and somebody else isn't.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's like,
Now what?
what do you do?
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
That's where it's like, what is there to do about that? It seems like it would be nice if there's an alternate program in total of other than capitalism, but there's not a strong argument
like I
for
used
those.
to like literally hate capitalism, but like
What's-
what else?
Yeah.
You know? I don't know. So I'm middle ground on capitalism.
Well, I'm like for it. I just think it's not functioning well right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's I think like a thing maybe people don't fully understand is like, it's just not functioning well, guys.
Right. It's not the whole system. It's how we have it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But how do we fix? How do we have it? That's the question.
Starts with us, baby.
Yeah.
Starts with the individuals and
It
then
does.
our families and
People around us. You thinking?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've come to this conclusion multiple times now
Mm-hmm.
from different angles.
Right.
And it's, talk to people, get better. I think try to start up your own things,
Yeah.
you know, of what fulfills you.
Right.
And maybe it's also like a question of, there's a small percentage, like, how are you gonna, this might not work as a question, but how are you gonna tackle the problems of abortion through a plant lens?
Such a good question.
You know what I mean, right?
No, I mean, I've gone to like some strikes and things, and like you have to make it work in your life.
Maybe say your major as well.
Oh, okay. So I'm a biology major with a concentration in botany and a minor in chemistry.
Yeah.
So
You love plants.
Yeah, I love plants. There it is.
sum.
That's the truth. And so like the chemistry minor could take me more into that, but the plants, I mean, plants can be heavily used in like medicine and things like that. So maybe I could use plants to help me figure out an effective birth control or something like that. But yeah.
Have you thought about what you want to do with your degree?
I will go do research where they pay me.
Mm.
That's where we're at.
Okay.
I would love to go into mycology. Like, I fucking love fungi. Like a lot. Which is like weird, but it's true.
What would you do in the mycology?
Again, wherever I can get a start.
So you'd like the research with fungi?
Yeah, I want to do research.
Fungi?
I've said it wrong a long time, and I love them. Like, you're good. I mean, ideally, I would want to go into research with that. And, like, I don't know. My professor's an actual mycologist, and she's the first mycologist I've actually met. And I'm like, damn, I want to be doing what you're doing. Like, I want to actually be doing research in this field because it's so unknown. Like, there's so much room to grow in this field, and I want to be part of that. And I think that fungi can be used in cleaning up chemical waste, and I think our environment isn't doing so hot. And if I could, you know, help that in any way, like, that would, I think, make me feel very fulfilled. And so that is like the dream, is to be doing research on fungi and how that they can be used to better the environment and combat climate change and just the mess we're making of this world. But again, I will go where the money is because there's not a whole lot in mycology. So
why the money?
Because I have to survive in a capitalist world.
Yeah.
Like, I have to be able to support myself, and I have to be able to pay my rent and buy food.
You can't do that on the other salary?
I mean, I could, but like, I have to get a job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to start somewhere.
Right.
But then couldn't you work towards that even if it's lower paying?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I will go where I can get a job. Not necessarily where the money is, wherever will hire me.
Mm-hmm. Where any money is.
Yes. Where there is any inkling of money, whether it be a little or a lot. I just need some.
Yeah.
I will just, at this start, I will go where I can get a job.
Okay.
But if
You're talking short term.
Yeah.
But then long term, would you build to that?
Yeah, I mean, so the goal is to end up doing mycology research. At the beginning, I will go where I can get a job because I need research experience somewhere in order to get a job where I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I will go where I can get hired. But long term, mycology research is where I want to end up, and I want to be doing it in a way to better the world. And that's the goal for me, is to make the world a better place a little bit. And if I can do that through research and mycology, then man, that's a dream. Like, that would be it.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to get to a point where I can do that first, which means getting a job.
Mm-hmm. Can I challenge you a bit?
Mm-hmm.
Where does a family fit into that?
I mean, I have to, in my opinion, I want to have a stable job, and I want to have a stable house, and I want to have, like, money saved up before I even, like, think about starting a family. Because
What if all three of those attributes were carried out in the guy you're with at the time?
I don't think I would be content staying at home.
Mm-hmm.
I get very bored in the mundane and doing the same thing over and over again. And, like, I've been in quarantine this past week. I've kind of lost my mind a little bit. Like,
you went hard on Duolingo.
Yeah, I did. Oh my God. Like, hard. But anyways, I, like, don't do well without, like, things or tasks to do. And, like, I worked full time last summer, and I, like, liked it. I liked having a routine, getting up in the morning and going and doing something, and not just, like, sitting at home and knowing I should clean and, like, things like that. And so I think that
Get bored easy?
but I think I need a job.
Do you think you could do research at home if you had the job
I don't know if
lined
I
up?
would be quite as motivated. I am a motivated person, but I also kind of need, like, the job or the grade or whatever it is to get me to do that thing. And it's something I'm working on currently. And, like, something I realized over the past week is that, like, I do just kind of sit at home if I don't have to, or, like, go do something else. But I'm not happy when I do that. But I, like, struggle to get the motivation to actually, like, go do something. So I think I personally will always be working, just because it makes me feel good. So even if my partner was stable and had money and all of that, I don't think I could stay at home. I would be happy, like, I want to help raise kids. Like, I do want to do that, but I think I would have to be working as I did that.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, what did you learn from this last week, kind of being cooped up with COVID and stuff?
I mean, I did a fair bit of thinking, and I really want to do better about being intentional with my time, because, like, these last few days, like, they dragged, but they also flew by. And, like, I watched a lot of TV, and I played a lot of Duolingo. And, like, there's worse things than Duolingo, but I wasn't necessarily like actively using this downtime to improve myself, you know. Like I could have been doing research on where I want to go to master's school, and like I could have been reading research articles and, you know, finding scholarships and looking for career opportunities. Like there's a lot more productive things I could have been doing. And I, you know, I want to get better about using my free time.
And you realize it too late, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, now.
Yeah.
Now I'm out of quarantine. But
yeah.
I mean, but I did a lot of thinking, which is a good thing. And I've come to those conclusions, whereas before maybe I wouldn't have.
Yeah, it's a good start.
Right.
Yeah.
Like sitting there and being like, wow, I'm really bored and out of my mind and I don't want to spend my time like this. Like, yeah, I could have used that week to do something else, but at least I came to that conclusion. And like going forward, I can work on that. And like, I really don't know how much downtime I'm going to have this summer. We'll see. We'll see how much time summer school takes. But if I have more downtime, I want to be more productive with it and do things that will help me down the line. And like, yes, rest is important, but you know, if I have downtime, I want to use it better. Like in high school, we kind of talked about this, like I had like every hour planned out. Like I literally did. And I was more fulfilled that way. Like having shit to do, like made me feel better, and like doing that shit, and like having an open schedule doesn't make me feel as productive, which doesn't make me feel as good. So I kind of want to get back to like really having a full schedule and really be doing things and not just like, I should do homework, but I'm not gonna. Like I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah. That's where like when I was still in school, but COVID was hitting, it actually worked for the most part for me well, because I would plan my week out and then I knew what I needed to do that day, and I'd usually get done by 12, especially because I wake up early. And so I just hit lectures and stuff at 6 a.m.
Yeah, I was done with school, but yeah.
And then I'd plan like the rest of my night out, you know. And I've always been super structured like that and planning things. So it worked better for me. And I'm in the easy 10% of people that actually act like that. Yeah. Where I think a lot of people felt cooped up with their summer classes. I was like, I feel more liberated with it.
It would depend on the day you asked me. I missed seeing friends a lot because like my family quarantined hard. You know how like in jail walls they do like a tally mark? We did that for like days I didn't leave my house. 60 days. I went on hikes. That was the most I got out, and like hiking.
Is this 2020?
This was like a hard lockdown. And so I missed people like a lot, and like I missed my graduation and I missed my prom, and like there was other bummers going on, but I also had a stable like workout routine, and I worked out when I needed to, and I, you know, was with my family, and it was like actually okay. Like because in high school I didn't spend a lot of time at home, but like my mom worked from home, my dad worked from home, my sister was home, and like we were all right. Like we were doing pretty good. I like hung out with my little sister and like didn't get yelled at or yell at her. So like, you know, it was okay. But I missed seeing friends a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I was speaking more from 2021 for me, because 2020 I was back home. Oh. But I was definitely different, where a couple months into that I got a job at a rehab facility. Okay. And I was working 12-hour shifts.
Yeah, I was at home.
7 to 7.
Oh, shit.
And I would get,
Dang.
And then sometimes I'd work the night shift, which was just staying there. Yeah. In their bed overnight. So, I mean, I had like some 70, 80, possibly 90-hour work weeks.
I wasn't working then, which is weird to think, because like I can't really remember not having a job, but I didn't then. Yeah.
But you're in more of a urban environment.
Very much.
And back home we're more rural. And I just made friends with coworkers, and they would be clients because they were paying with our clients.
Yeah, no, I didn't have a job to go talk to people. I had like Zoom calls with my classes sometimes. But yeah, we locked down pretty hard. Yeah. But during that time, I don't remember like this past like 5 days, I was literally sitting there, I was like, how the hell did I do this for like months? What?
There's like a community thing with it though.
Yeah, we were on it together like, then.
Oh, 2 weeks stop the
Whereas
spread,
these
right?
are my 5 days. Yeah, no, it was a rough 5 days to get it. Like my friends were doing a lot those 5 days, and I was like, playing Duolingo. Yeah. Killing it. But yeah, I mean, I think I realized that I need to be more intentional with my free time, and that I like want to be more productive and do more to like because I'm not doing bad, but I like want to do more to better myself.
Me too. I always want to push it.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to create some more consistent routines in my life of things that are better for me. Yeah. That's the goal for this
How are you
summer.
going to do that?
Well, the first goal is, because I do work out and I go rock climbing and I do yoga, but it's not consistent. It's not necessarily on a schedule. And I think I want it to be, because then I like have to do it. Whereas now it's like, oh, I feel like doing this. Whereas it's not like, Chelsea, this is good for you. You need to go do it. It's, well, today I want to, today I don't. And so I think the first step is going to be creating a consistent routine with that. But then I don't really have a consistent work schedule right now. And so that makes it hard to create other schedules. So I think the first 2 steps are to go to work and fill out a new time form, because classes changed. And then I need to create a routine off of that.
Yeah, for me, it's just making minimum requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah. So work-wise, 40 hours a week. Then workout-wise, 2 strength workouts, 2 climbing sessions, 1 flexibility day. And then through doing that, know that I like to climb, then the exact next day lift. And then that third day can either be that flexibility day or an off day. And then the structure's kind of built from that.
Yeah.
But then it's more fluid while still being rigid.
Yeah.
Because I heard it from someone, but they're like, you're doing it wrong when you feel, it's too rigid when you feel stuck and frustrated in it, which makes sense because of rigidity, the word
Life
itself.
changes and you don't want to be stuck in things.
Yeah. So it means you need more fluidity.
I think
in
I'm
it.
a little too fluid right now. Yeah. So I need to work on finding.
But the bridge is, I guess, what I'm getting at to that is I guess the standards or minimum requirements. And for me, I don't know if most people are like this, but for me, it's always within the week. I think some people can do the day or like a month.
I
tried.
By weeks, yeah.
I think a lot of people, that's like in our scope of what we can see.
I can think a week in advance. A day's too short, a month is too long, but a week, something I can handle.
Yeah. Yeah. And your weeks will look similar, which colors the month itself. Yeah. Because I did like a mental assessment on myself the other day, like a personal one. And I was like, I went through the 3 pillars I started with community because I have stuff going on with my family. So I wrote that out, got that down pat. And then I went with friends and then like my romantic life. And then that was everything under community that I needed to get down. And then finances, just little blurb about my job. And then personal stuff that isn't paying but hope to be paying,
Right.
And then financial assets, leveraging capital and stuff like that, basically. And then health, getting back into my training has gotten a little too fluid, so trying to get that down well. Diet's been great though. I need to eat more bananas.
You eat a lot of bananas. I ate a whole apple.
Nice. Wait. Why is that impressive?
Because I can't usually eat a whole apple.
Oh, I remember now.
Yeah. Sat there and was like, wow, I did that.
I've been eating at least 1 banana a day. I think it needs to be 2 bananas a day. That was my resolution.
That's your resolution. Add 1 banana.
But I eat one before and after I work out.
Okay.
And it's like a natural energy boost instead of taking some caffeine, especially because now I'm lifting at night usually. I can't take caffeine. Right. And I never usually relied on that, but
yeah, you can't now.
Now I definitely can't. And yeah, sugars, fasting, all that good stuff. I bought a lot of meat over the weekend. You'd be proud of me. You little veg.
Yeah. My diet this past week has been fucked because I'm staying in like a guest house right now. She doesn't actually have a kitchen. She has a hot plate. And so, and like I couldn't go to the grocery store, and she doesn't even have olive oil in her house.
Do you have your apartment still?
I've been quarantined. Oh, okay. I was house sitting, and I got a positive COVID test,
Yeah.
and so I went and quarantined at the house I'm house sitting for, not
Okay.
my apartment. And so,
Because you have roommates.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm quarantined. I don't know. At the house I'm house sitting for. So I didn't actually have my stuff, which I think was another part of why I was so bored, because I didn't have my things. It's like, well,
You couldn't organize like a time to go at least grab your own things?
I mean, small bits. Like grab some clothes, a book. But yeah, so
That seems silly on your part.
maybe a little bit. But I didn't
Yeah.
have my kitchen, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So I couldn't really cook as much because I just had a hot plate and like not very many groceries. So the diet's been rough this week.
Yeah.
We'll be getting better once I have a kitchen again.
Yeah.
Makes me appreciate a stove.
Are you house sitting at one of the nicer houses?
Not right now.
Oh. That you're
In
talking
a couple
about?
couple weeks.
Yeah.
27th, yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'll be gone then.
I'm there for a week and a half.
Perfect.
And somebody else just texted me about house sitting, and I kind of wanted to read it. Okay, so maybe the 17th I will be also. Yeah, but I will be happy to have a kitchen again.
Okay.
Makes you appreciate it a little bit more.
What do you like to cook?
Anything. I like to eat different things. I have a hard time eating like the same thing over and over again.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Wanna
Duolingo's
get this
telling
out
me
of
that
the way.
it's been a long time.
Yeah, I bet.
It would be a bummer to lose that 5-day streak, just saying.
I have like a 93-day streak.
You do.
Yeah.
I got bored because it was really easy, and so I did 2 of the unit checks, like 2 in advance. So now I'm on like level 5, where I always started on level 2.
That's fine.
But
If
now,
you can handle it.
yeah, now actually might like be challenged. Yeah, a lot of Duolingo. Hopefully less Duolingo now that my life is like starting again.
I'll just do a lesson a day.
Mm-hmm. I want to do 2 or 3 a day.
Okay.
Yep. Not however many I was doing.
You should have gone quarantine today because Apex dropped their mobile app.
Oh.
And you could have been a gamer with me.
No.
I found out I can sync my Xbox controller to it because like playing on your phone is shit with your
yeah.
fingers and stuff.
Right.
I was wrecking people so badly. I felt so bad.
Oh.
It was fun,
Yeah.
but kind of dumb because I was playing on my phone. And I dropped like 50% battery just in one game.
Yeah, I bet.
But yeah, I don't know.
I don't know how we ended up on this.
Yeah, I don't know. We're talking on a lot of heady stuff, a lot of heavy stuff.
Yeah. What time is it?
What do we do? What do we do?
I mean, we've said it a couple times. The most you like, the
Focus
starting
on
point
yourself,
is working
right?
on yourself and those around you,
Yeah.
having conversations with those around you.
I had a couple thoughts that I already forgot to bring up with you
Mm.
during just us talking.
Mm.
But I read something I should not share. That's for me only.
Now I'm curious.
Sorry, this is invigorating to listen to. Okay, maybe I don't have something. There's a bunch of things, but I don't know if we could talk about them. I feel like some of this problem is due to the loss of religion for people.
Explain.
Well, the Tower of Babel. Well, the new atheist movement, for one. Those idea pathogens have gotten into people. And I use that in a sense of people carry these ideas and don't even know it. Similar to like kind of the abortion pathogen of ideas, but they can come from any direction. I'm not saying it's just on the intellectual left leaning.
Yeah.
But yeah, this problem with using even the word God in general, you know, it, especially talking to like people on campus, it seems to have more of a negative tinge to it sometimes. It's a little bit different with our campus, I think, because I think Fort Collins is a little bit more religious
Yeah.
on average.
Yeah.
Especially, I think in the general population, there's probably a high percentage of church-going people here.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that.
Whereas, like, I think nationally it's below 50% for people church-going,
Mm-hmm.
and then drops off pretty steadily after
Mm-hmm.
that, you know? I think that is a part of it. I think another part of it is we don't have a common enemy. Like, during wars, we had an enemy, but then... And it's a tough enemy to, like, pinpoint because you can be neutral for so long, and then when it's your time to maybe act, you're silent. And I know I said silence is violence, but, like, the many people that are around these leaders that don't even just, like, give constructive criticism and challenge them are a problem as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's all within this leadership thing. And it goes back to something I'm trying to figure out right now is, like, and I haven't formulated this thought, so I might get it wrong, but has the birth control pill made more women more like men? And in some ways it has, like, reproductively in certain respects. But I would like to see if there's a study on, like, personality differences before 1960 and after.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. But I also would wonder if some of that is based on, like, a cultural shift.
Okay.
I mean, I am on birth control, but even before that, I never wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I never wanted to be shut at home. I never, like, I'm always, like, if somebody, this is very specific, but my dad's side of family is mildly sexist. And if they told me I couldn't do something, I was like, fuck you, I'm doing it. Like, I don't care, I'm doing it. Because, like, I don't know. I hated being told I couldn't do something because I was a woman. I hated it. And that was before birth control. That's always been me. And so I do wonder if some of that is a cultural shift and not necessarily because of...
Some of what is a cultural shift? When you say that, what are you referring to?
Just like...
Just so we're
yeah, women
with
wanting, or like as you said, like, acting more like men. Like, the shift between how women acted in, like, prior to 1960s and how they act now. I would wonder if some of that is a cultural shift and not necessarily, based on, an increased use of birth control. Like, I have a lot of my roommates, like, aren't on birth control, and they're going into engineering, and they would hate to be told that they had to be a stay-at-home wife and that they had to, fill certain roles in life. Like, that would piss them off, and they're not on birth control. That's just something they believe, like, as themselves. So, I don't know. I would guess there is a change. And, like, I went on birth control really young. Mm-hmm. And I was a grumpy little booger, and my hormones were a mess. But if I hadn't gone on birth control, like, my hormones would have figured themselves out. Like, they would have. It would have been later than they did. But they would have got there. And, I mean, I would still think I would hold the same fundamental beliefs and, like, goals in life. I don't think that birth control necessarily changed that. I think it helps balance my hormones now, but, like, I don't think it would change what I wanted out of life.
Mm-hmm.
That's my perspective. That's what my experience has been.
To me, because there's generalities we can pull from the population.
Yeah.
It seems like you tilt more away from what a quote-unquote general woman would be, because they usually tend to be more agreeable on the temperament scale, and as you said, you're more disagreeable. And so that's abnormal.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
No.
But it's abnormal, especially to be trending to the higher to more disagreeability is not normal.
So for me, I am very much a pushover. If you put, this is with people I know. This is with my family that I fight back. But in general, if you put me like, yeah, like at work, I don't argue shit. Like, I'm pretty agreeable to the public. But like with people I know, I'm not going to put up with that.
What do you think that is? Because I've seen that in other things too. What do you think that is where it's like selective disagreeability, but
I think it's a comfort thing. Like with my family, I am comfortable saying, hey, no, you don't get to tell me that I can't do that. Like, I'm willing to tell those people no. Whereas with the public, I'm a little more reserved and held back in saying those things. And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, that it's so different for me, but it is. And yeah, I think with me, it comes with like being comfortable around a person. But yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing.
Yeah. I guess I wonder like how much amount of me doing this relied on my disagreeability, because it goes against like what's popular in the sense of what's most people do, which is just they grab a job and sit in it.
Right.
You know, and it's a little bit different from our generation. We bounce around a little bit more, but still the idea is like find an employer to rely on is almost a better idea. And I don't know if this would be different if I was more agreeable and just stuck in that, you know. And
you might just accept it.
Yeah. I don't know how much of that plays into it, if it's actually there's other roles, like this is more like of a pursuit of what I enjoy than a like screw you.
But do you enjoy this because it is challenging ideas and disagreeing with people?
I do. Yeah. That's probably part of it, you know. And yeah, it's hard to parse out, but it's like maybe I think that there's a little bit of a lack of this kind of conversation in the general thing.
Right.
So, and maybe like we have a tilted idea of what disagreeability is, you know, and it's not always a middle finger and a F you.
Right.
It's I'm just going to go my own way, maybe. And I think that probably plays into it, you know?
I mean, this is a much more like polite disagreement than saying fuck you and walking away.
Yeah.
Like having these conversations and like whether this is you disagreeing against like having a solid job or not. Like this is a much more polite way of doing it than like walking out on your job and quitting and like throwing your desk as you do so. Like those are very different ways to disagree.
Yeah. 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 And it's different ways for it to manifest. I think this is like the most safe way to say F you. But it's got to start somewhere, I guess, as well, you know?
Yeah.
So it's not nothing. It's something.
Right. You're doing something.
I guess what I was earlier trying to get at is it seems like you tilt a little differently than the average on some aspects.
Yeah.
What I was going to ask was, even for that, do you think that the majority of women in the U.S. would find more life satisfaction from having a family, from cultivating a family, than a career? That's a question I've been curious about.
I know you like generalities and I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I think it should be a choice. I think women should have the option.
I don't disagree with that.
And I think it's very different for a lot of people. Like, I still want a family, but I also want a productive, successful career as well. Like, I want both of those things. And both of my parents work, you know, and like, as far as attention goes, I never lacked an attention from my parents. They maybe didn't teach me all like the best things, but like they were always there for me when I needed them, and they were both working, and I think they're both fulfilled that way. Like, I think it doesn't have to be one or the other. And yeah, I would say people probably mostly want both. Like, yeah. Again, I'm speaking for myself. I don't know the statistics or anything, but I would think people would want both. From what I've seen, from people I've talked to, from those around me, from what I've seen, from what I've read, people like both.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, well, at one point people say that, they actually know what they're advocating for.
What do you mean by that?
And this is
Like, what are they advocating for?
they would be advocating for like a equal parenting split, which would mean equal career and equal family socialization. And I wonder if that's a middle ground where both things lose. Where somebody should have just chose career for 90 to 80% of the time and went hard at that. And then somebody should have chose family. And I think it's a little easier where you could do that 60 to 70% of the time, and then that 30% would be on a part-time career, so to speak.
So when you made your list of things in your life, your mental list, you had both career and like family on there. Like those things are both important to you too, correct? Like you want to have a family, but you don't necessarily want to be a part of it. Is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the idea is, I think the closer I get to it, the better I'll know. But the idea is I'm still a part of it, even if I'm only there 20 to 30% of the time.
Yeah.
And I have a sneaking suspicion that it's almost good for the kids to have some sort of mystery with one of the parents. And that's a thought I want to fill out more. But I wonder if there's some utility to that.
What would that or like I mean, you obviously haven't, like, this isn't
well, like
you thought, but what would that purpose be? What would you think it would be?
You had your parents and I, to a certain extent, around a lot, and so you got to see that they're just normal people.
Right.
But then if you had a parent that you knew very familiar, and this is another theory I'm thinking in my head of like why that family split might be good, is you have a secure base almost of traditionally the mom to be there always for the majority of the time. And you're hyper familiar with her. And then there's a lot of obscurity with that father figure that makes you revere and not from his position force fear onto you, which is not right, but almost just intrinsically you hold a high revere for that figure because he's not going out, and it's a difference between that 70%. He's not going out and hitting the bars with his friends. Right. He's actually going out and slaying something. You know, he's working at something. And there's a lot of like, what's he doing today? Like this fantasy, imagination kind of takes place, especially as a kid, you know. And then he comes home at the end of the day or week, possibly, and then you get to see him. You know, there's like this cool mystical element to it.
I don't know if I would see that as a good thing.
No? Like,
I'm very grateful that I'm connected to both of my parents. And, like, my parents both worked. Like, they were both gone all day. But, like, I appreciate that I can go to them for things and talk to them and, like, that I know them. And that I don't think it's a bad thing to know that they're human. Like, I don't think that's a bad thing to realize that they have flaws and they're not some...
See... I think there's a problem just on the side. We're operating, at least you're attempting to operate in this binary. And I'm trying to operate in this, what might be most optimal, which is a little different. What we were kind of talking about earlier, it's not, I forget what it was, but it's not that this is bad and this is good. It's that this is stronger. Oh, rationale versus feelings. It's not that feelings are bad and rationale is good or rationale is bad. It's for these big collective decisions in that case, but then in these decisions that affect how your whole life and family structure are going to be structured, it seems to me stronger. That's what
I don't know if I see it as stronger.
Okay. I just try to stay away from the binary.
I just don't know if I see that as stronger.
Okay.
Like, I think having a connection with your parents is important. And so I don't necessarily see that as better, because that denies that.
See, this is still a binary where there's still a connection with you and your father.
Yeah. It's just,
So there's not no connection.
Yeah.
There's still a connection. And if anything, you get to run a little bit rampant with this connection, and it almost becomes a hyper connection of fantasy instead of this mundane, normal connection with your mother. And I'm not saying mothers are boring.
what if the roles were switched?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm using this as an example because it's more traditional. And so it's
But
easier
if the
to
roles
wrap
were
your,
switched, it would still work. Okay.
I think it would still work. Yeah. I think it's less likely just because there's a more of a emotional connection generated from mothers to their kin more often than fathers.
Yeah.
And I use more often and not
Always.
right? Yeah. So I think whether it's good or bad, if more things operated under that scope, it would fall more under the mother just because you have that motherly caring urge that is common.
Yeah.
And as we're learning through these studies, it's not culturally supplied into women. It's actually seems to be more biological or evolutionary as well. So that's kind of where I come from that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my take is that a strong connection is important between parents and their children. And I think that both parents should be present and have that connection. Because even if you have a connection with your kid, if you are gone for a week, in my perspective, that's not optimal. Like, that doesn't seem like it would be the best thing for the kid to have an almost, not necessarily absent figure, but a mostly absent figure. Like, I don't feel like that fosters a strong connection. And like could you ask that parent if things were wrong, or could you, like, if you don't truly know someone or understand that they have, like, if you don't know them, would you go to them if you needed something, if they're not truly there or present for you?
I think this is why evolutionarily we're different male and female wives, because you have that mother for that.
Yeah.
You have that secure base, like I said. So you have somebody always. And then you have this mystical figure, you know.
I just think that fantasy isn't great.
Why not?
I mean,
See, like, not to get too personal, but you saw the mundane in both your parents and almost found it in extracurricular and another family a little bit as well. So you looked for that elsewhere. And I'm saying that you would just look for that towards that semi-absent figure. And that's where I think it might be stronger. And as we outlined earlier, there's like the primary of like family education and then secondary school, and then those will pick up if it's not working.
Right.
And it's just a theory I'm trying to put together, but as my theory might go, that's put together correctly if these roles were associated this way. Because then you don't have to look out to the outside world. You're still influenced a little bit, but then you have that figure to look towards, you know?
Yeah. The figure is teaching you.
The figure is the father.
Yeah.
The father figure.
Right.
And then you have the secure base within the mother. Is how.
So, I mean, yeah, I did lack one secure parent, so I did turn outwards. But I don't think that was like looking for fantasy or something to look to. Like, that was, I mean, that was me needing connections and responsibility and things. But I don't think that was because I lacked like a father figure looking out to.
That's not exactly what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I know it's not. I'm trying to figure out what you're trying to say.
Okay. And I'm still trying to figure it out as well. I had something I was going to connect to that and forgot. Yeah. That's my theory. And I know you don't like the broad generalizations, but that's also a thought I've been trying to figure out, is like, how much divulgence would there be if there was to be an archetype of a family to be found?
I mean, I think there is an archetype of a family.
What's that?
I mean, it's what you're saying. It's a father who works, a mother who stays home, and 2 or 3
yeah.
kids. Like, that is an archetype of a family.
Yeah.
That is. And I know a lot of people who do not fit into that. Not just me. I know a lot of people who don't fit into that.
From the child's perspective or as a parenting perspective?
I mean, just for like what people want in life. I know a lot of people who don't want that.
Do you think that's just, I'm guessing those people are more our age?
Generally,
Are more younger, below 25?
I would say below 40.
Mm.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
maybe below 35.
What I was going to get at is I would have a suspicion that changes the closer you get to year 30, which is where a lot of these decisions are made.
Yeah. Yeah. Where you're actually deciding whether to sit down and start a family.
When it's fun to like think, oh, we split our roles and everything like that. But then when the rubber hits the road, it's like, oh, I'm taking care of the kids. Or, you know.
I would say another part of it is when I was really little, I went to my grandparents after school. And so my parents could both be working and not pay for childcare. So they didn't have to choose.
That's a good point.
For people who have to choose, it gets a little tricky because childcare is expensive. And for my family, it was free. So my family could keep working. So, and people who don't have like the choice to like hire a nanny or something, then it's a little harder because somebody has to take care of the kids and you're either going to pay for it or you're going to do it yourself. Whereas my parents didn't have to make that choice.
Yeah.
And I think my family's appreciative of that because my mom didn't have to leave work.
Okay. So I could see that model more if that secure base is almost grandparents.
Yeah, I mean, I go see my grandma every week. Like, I love her. Like, I do.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it necessarily has to be a mother or a father figure.
That makes sense. Well, I'm just saying, I'm not saying mother has to be secure base. I'm just saying secure base needs to be needed, and then mystical figure needs to be almost needed.
I agree that a secure base is needed. I don't necessarily see the need for the mystical figure.
The mystical figure also has this property of being a very strong authority and leader as well. Somebody that takes a lot of responsibility up.
And is the kid supposed to pick up on that?
I think so, yeah.
They're supposed to, Are they supposed to take those traits on themselves, or are they supposed to respect that figure? I
think just by sheer being around such a character, especially if in my example, the father's involved, that it should trickle in. Like, yes, he's gone 30% of the time in this idea, but like 10% of that is them teaching him to like hunt and like exercise and stuff like that. Like the time he's there is what I'm saying.
I think that lacks in our society.
Yeah.
When people are home, they're home. Yeah. I feel like they don't necessarily take that time to put it towards their kids. And I think that's lacking in our society.
Yeah. And it would be something like, and what I'm envisioning is like, he comes home and you're doing things with him.
Right. He's
not watching TV.
Right. Okay. So he's like actually present.
No. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like it's because he's only there for a short amount of time. What I envision is hyper presence.
Right. But he makes it count.
Yes. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I don't necessarily see that in our society, but I could see where that would work as long as that person was like very much present when they were there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez. Good snap.
There was a couple of them earlier too.
I also wonder though, because it seems like you tilt more away from the average woman.
Is that in your experience, or what is that based on?
Well, we need you to take a test to know for sure, but it seems like you're more disagreeable than most women. And might be slightly more disagreeable than most men, which is different. Like I said, that's one thing.
Right. But is that based on your personal experience, or is that based on like studies and
studies?
Things?
Yeah, like in the more egalitarian things like we talked about. So no, I was reading about it today. That's why it's on my mind.
I mean more the like, not necessarily the agreeableness, but what I want out of life. Like, is that based?
That's a little more murky. I haven't seen things directly on that.
Right.
I mean, you could draw conclusions based on the fact that women will go into more person-centric jobs, and men will go into more thing-oriented jobs.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, that thing, and here's the thing with just how the economy is structured, is those thing activities are a lot more easily scalable than the person things. And so there's more money to be made on that. And so then if you're to have somebody quit, you would rather have the person making less money, is also why, like, just
Right.
rationally why I would think the woman stays home more often under that example.
Yeah.
But then also she's already choosing something more person-centric, and then it just goes to her own person she made centric.
Right.
So it kind of...
And do you think women choosing more person-centric jobs, is that biological, or is that based on society's expectations?
I think there's a minority influence from culture, but a majority influence of biological and evolutionary pressures. And that's what these studies conclude.
Yeah.
That's not
Right.
my experience. That's what they have concluded.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously don't really fit into that, so I have a harder time seeing it. Because
Fit into what?
Like, I don't fit into that. I'm going into hard science. Like,
Yeah.
that's the truth of it.
You're the minority.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I have a hard time.
And it's funny because I'm in human services.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking of that. Like, you work with people.
Yeah. No, we both go contrary to what. But then also I'm like, if we, it's fun, like, listening to stereotypes to me. Like, if I'm being more disagreeable by my other projects, right? And then trying to spin off something that is actually scalable from something that's not usually scalable, which is human services type deals. And it would make me wonder, just because we're drawn these bilateral dispositions. I don't know if maybe that works, because I would wonder if you would go into these more research-based fields and try to put the person back into it. You know, it's an interesting thought.
My parents wanted me to go into human services. They thought I would do good there.
So they'll love me. But you know what I mean with like,
will I try to? Yeah.
I'm trying to bring more of a scalability to it, and I'm wondering if
I'll do the other.
It's just a theory, you know.
I guess we'll see.
You'll bring more
see
of
where
a
life takes me.
human aspect to research. You know.
Yeah.
Which is then you wonder, like, we're the minority, but then we act like the majority within our minority, if you think about it, which is...
But would it be a good thing to bring that, you know, like bringing other perspectives and people who bring other things into your field? So, like, if there was more... Oh, gosh, if there was more of you in your career who brought in the majority thinking into the minority, would that be beneficial for the field? You know what I mean?
That's a good question.
Like, if I
think for
science
me,
bring more people into science,
I think...
Is that something we should encourage?
That's a good question.
Because I would think it would be something we should encourage.
Yeah. I think if you could rightly profit and then scale helping people, that sounds good.
Right.
I think when it comes to yours, it's a little trickier because you want scientific values to be upheld.
Yeah.
And then we take into account...
So could the group
people.
be used to hold individuals into accountability?
The group?
Like, if I brought more, like a more... like the more human personable side into science, could that be used to hold individuals more accountable?
It depends on how it manifests. Like, you might just study a different particular type of things than what other people might, you know.
Right.
Which then it's like brings it in, but to a specific domain. So the effect size is smaller, you know, but it's still a change.
Yeah. I could see those changes being a positive.
Yeah, I don't think there's a negative to it.
I mean, I just think that means that we should encourage the minorities to do that, you know, to encourage people to go where they want to. No?
I'm shaking my head right now.
I see that.
We just came to the same conclusion. I divulged at different thoughts. And you thought that, and I thought this, that's all good and well if the minority wants to break walls, but that's only under the scope if they're doing the things that fulfill them.
Yeah.
I don't think it should be in the name of making this domain more righteous with diversity. Yeah. I think it should be in the name of this is what fulfills me. And I think those are different.
Yeah, diversity for just to be like, we're diverse. Like,
yeah.
it should make people happy.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be like,
Yeah.
we need a picture of a person of color
Well,
on
it's
our
like-
campus, so we're gonna have like 5 people come.
Mhm.
Like, it shouldn't be diversity just to like for diversity's sake.
You can sit back. You're just angling it wrong. No, I think we see eye to eye on that, but it's like when it's, of course, how do I want to say this? Of course, yeah, I agree that there's more black people in poverty than white.
Mm.
But if you still just did we're going to solve poverty and did that first,
Mm-hmm.
there's still a majority of black people in poverty. So then you're still having preferential treatment just by the nature of pursuing poverty. But then if you're like, we're going to have preferential treatment just to them and they're 40%, then you're missing 60%.
Right.
So the diversity idea gets a little hairy
Mm-hmm.
when you try to bring things into actuality instead of like these principled pursuits of let's end poverty or let's fulfill
Mm-hmm.
what my soul wants to do,
Yeah.
you know, because then we're not trying to force
People.
a 30 split
Mhm.
of black, white,
Yeah.
Asian into a
Right,
in a
right.
field just for the sake of diversity
Having
of
a
thought.
30. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
That's where I will divulge from that.
yeah. I mean, I don't think like the workforce should be like 50-50 split male female, but I think that women should be more welcomed into those other fields, and males should be more welcomed into the person or like the human related fields. And that doesn't mean it needs to be a 50-50. It just means that it needs to be more of an option, and people shouldn't face as much judgment or like pressure to go one way or the other. I think that people should really have the choice themselves.
I think this is where you relay how reality will actually work on
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
And we need stereotypes are useful because when you need to make quick decisions,
Mm-hmm.
you can understand just the situation in general
Right.
of what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And while we should have these laws in place that don't allow discrimination,
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, if my daughter was say, I'm going to be an architect, I'm going to support that. But then in my head, I'm like, you're going against the grain. Just like you're going against what
Yeah.
you're like biologically predisposed to have. I'm not saying you can't.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think like there should be a welcoming to anybody, you know. I think it should just be a almost just a cold assessment of how good you are.
Right.
And then if you're good,
Gender's not a part of that.
Yeah.
It's just whether you're going to do
Yeah.
a good job or not.
and then if it's architecture, most likely the majority are going to be guys.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're doing it based on merit, then there's going to be the trickle of the minority of girls that already had the predisposition, chased it, and then got it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's how I would have things.
Mm. I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it should be based on merit. There's barriers to that at the present moment, and I think those should be less.
Like what?
I mean, you know, I chose to go into hard science, but my parents wanted me to go into like
Mm-hmm.
human resources and things like that.
How hard did they pressure that?
I mean, it wasn't really a gender thing with them. I don't know. I didn't know what I wanted to do for a very long time, so it was kind of questionable. But there's just like a lot of expectations of women and females. Like two of my roommates are female engineers, and they go to engineering things, and they're like the only ones there. And like they have friends who could have done just as well in that, but they didn't. And they might have been discouraged to do that or been encouraged to do something else. And I think that should be done less.
Mm.
I think encouraging people to go one way when they could be doing better in another isn't like right, you know? Like if your daughter's playing with Legos, encourage that. Like let her do those hard, like the physical building things. Let her do that.
Is it not more? I guess I flinch at the encourage that part.
Mm.
Is it not more just have a wider way of opportunities, which I think is different than encouraging because there's a bias in encouraging.
Yeah. You are pushing her
Yes.
towards something.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
because then you would have the occasional female that gets pushed into engineering and
doesn't
would have
want
been
to be.
happier nursing,
Yeah. So I guess.
you know?
Yeah.
So I would just say a wider range and set that up properly. And then in your head, you're like, most likely it's going to sort this way, just how people
Right.
work. And that's what we see when we look into these egalitarian societies, is that they do sort that way.
Yeah.
So
I just don't think there should be any doors for people who want to diverge from that.
any obstacles? Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
why we have the laws of no discrimination based on that, which is good. And then what's left is the, I guess, social pressures. And that to me would mean a micro failure within the family.
Yeah.
Which then you would hope that, as we talked about, the secondary thing kicks in where there's the opportunity to learn these things in school.
Yeah.
And if that's not there, then there's the opportunity in society itself for them to find this.
Yeah.
And you would hope it starts at the family,
Right.
like we talked about.
Yeah. I think it just needs to be open to people doing, like, what the minority, like, being, I think it needs to be open for people to be in the minority.
I think it's like a tricky balance between being open, but then also like understanding what we tend to do. You know, I think that's where the middle lies. That's so vague, it's hard to pinpoint exactly, because there's not a rule of thumb for these necessarily. It's like we know we can easily identify the extremisms as we have, but the exact middle way is tough, other than like don't push anything too heavily and allow opportunity,
Yeah.
which seems like a good rule of thumb,
Yeah.
you know.
Let people do what's going to fulfill them. Don't try to fight it.
Yeah. Don't do anything that's by force.
Right.
Yeah. But then it's funny because you see them sort in this particular way
Yeah.
when the least amount of force is applied.
Yeah. And I don't think that's a bad thing. If that's how people naturally sort, then great. I just think that for the minority, it needs to be an option to go the other way.
Yeah. I'm all for the option. Yeah. Yeah. That's where like there's a difference between equality and egalitarianism. Because the egalitarianism is outcome dependent,
Yeah.
where there's
Right,
that 50-50 split at the end.
Everybody needs to end up in the same spot.
Yeah. And that's actually wrong
Right.
in multiple different ways, you know. And that equal split is actually just equality of opportunity, like we talked about.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember some figure I've seen, but I'm only remembering like a third of it.
Okay.
It's not gonna work. So don't.
Figure, like a person?
No, it's like an illustration, and it like goes over the differences between equality of outcome, equality of opportunity.
Oh, with the
people in the
standing
boxes
on
and the
box.
fence. Yeah.
Did you see the third edition of that?
Yeah, and I can't
It was
remember.
like reality.
Yeah.
is
right,
what it said.
Right.
And they're all
It's like people different heights. Like.
they're all cut off at the limbs.
Oh.
Oh,
Okay, I
are
haven't
we
seen
talking
that
about
one.
different things?
I think there might be. I'm trying to remember it, and I can't remember the whole thing.
Well, it's just equality. It's all the kids trying to look over the fence.
Different heights of boxes and things.
I saw, yeah. Oh, that's not the right one. Yeah, that one. That's the one I saw that I
Oh
liked.
yeah. No, but it's that's pretty funny. No, I hadn't seen that one.
Yeah. Where it's like we just cut everybody to size.
Right, and
but
everybody
nobody
sees anything.
It's where you force that sorting. Is that what you were thinking?
Kinda.
Well, there's this one with the taller boxes.
I think that's the one I've seen.
And that's when I think our system is not working.
Mind if I? Yeah. The reality.
The reality one.
Yeah,
That's
where the boxes are
that's
so
when
different.
it's not, somebody made that as reality itself, and to me it's more reality when our systems aren't functioning properly.
When things aren't going as they should.
And then I think
The difference between
things are
equality and equity. Yeah.
I think the things that are functioning correctly are equality, this one, where there are some losers
Yeah.
like we talked about,
Mm-hmm.
sadly. And I guess this one has liberation where there is no fence, but that seems very
I don't.
utopian
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
I love
Like
this
there's
one
always.
though.
I do too.
With them
Yeah.
cut at the limbs.
I actually just cut everybody in half. No. Yeah. That one's better.
Awesome.
Mm.
I got a great text from. Never mind.
Mm.
People. Yeah. You have any other thoughts while you stretch? Ooh, good pop. Good pop.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Quick little back break.
Covered a lot.
We did.
What do
Yeah.
we do?
What do we do?
What do we
Well,
do?
I'm hungry.
Figure out. Well, that's not what I mean.
You meant going forward from this conversation.
Figure out ourselves.
Figure out ourselves.
Figure out our families.
Yep. Create a productive, healthy family.
Yeah. Can you scale family progression?
What do you mean by that?
Like what I'm trying to do is like family services, basically. Scale them. So I think the reason why human services are so tough is because you're dealing with people that don't have money.
Yeah.
One thought I've heard and seen that I kind of like is some sort of model that works with families that have money. And then a percentage of that is used in a way where there's services then reinvested into families that don't have money.
Yeah.
Because there's no other way to develop a business around it unless you do nonprofit, right? Because then you're getting government assistance.
Right.
And then you're still relying on somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Because the money needs to come from somewhere to pay the people to do the work and
Right.
to run the models
Yeah,
and
you
everything.
need money.
And so, yeah, like one idea was like 10% of all income is going to be put and pay teachers to then pursue a small bit of families that need to get better.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the tough thing is it's
Yeah.
not scalable. It's not by itself. You have to manipulate something
Yeah.
in some way.
Yeah. Change, like, yeah.
Because
You just have to, like, resources are budgeted.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're giving to something, you have to take from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, there's not really any avoiding that.
Yeah, there's not. Because I think, like, bringing it back to the individual, I think a majority of people did not get COVID and quarantine and come out of it enlightened like you might have.
Yeah.
I think that was a special occasion.
Right. They didn't go
You
through
know.
the isolation and be like, wow, this is making me really unhappy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should change my life positively from
Right.
it. I don't think that, I would hope, but I don't think
Yeah.
it was like that.
I don't know if a lot of people would sit in that situation and think.
Yeah.
Like, would a lot of people just turn on the TV?
Yeah. And I think that's a small percentage that will do what you did.
Mm-hmm.
And then there needs to be like a accountability of people
Mm-hmm.
to do that. And through some business structure, it might work.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to the family. Like, we were,
Mm-hmm.
like, in the video, the dad has kids who, like, want to do things, but they don't have the motivation to get up and do it. And so I think it
Yeah.
comes from the family teaching kids to work to better
How
themselves.
to clean the bathroom.
Yeah. And, like, there's the son who wants to start working out, and the dad's like, yo, tomorrow you just have to be there. And the son doesn't show up. And that dad's like, what the hell?
Mm-hmm.
But, like, people do have to want to do it themselves. But I think that parents can nurture that and teach kids to, like, want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
See, I wonder, like, under that, if the father was less readily available, that son would be begging for more attention. And then when he was like, we can work out at this time, you got to show up.
he would
though.
actually show up.
He would actually show up. See, I think that might be part of the utility of that
Yeah.
mystical leader.
I think in that situation, though, both parents were present all the time. Because it sounds like the mom isn't doing much of anything.
Yeah.
So I think that would be both parents being present all the time.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is
They
more to
need-
my model.
Yeah, maybe the kid doesn't value the dad's time as much.
Because he's there all the time. Because then you take it for
Is that
granted.
a respect thing? Is that the kids not respecting their father?
That's a good question.
Because I think you can gain respect in multiple ways. And if
Yeah.
you weren't present, then your kids would respect your time. But I think you could foster that respect even if you were present.
If you could foster respect if you weren't present?
Even if you were. Like,
Oh.
because the father who's absent, the kid's going to like value the father's time because he's not there and he doesn't get much of it.
I think that gets tricky though, because like hypothetically he teaches them how to clean the bathroom and then go and clean the bathroom. And that is the example, but he does that in multiple different ways in the household. He just had a lot of hours freed up for him. What is he going to do at that time? He's going to be absent with the household.
Yeah.
Hopefully, is my hope.
Yeah.
Or he's going to watch TV.
Yeah,
And
you
then
hope
that's
he'd be
what we
doing
don't
something to
hope
better
for.
himself. Yeah.
And then therefore he's out. Kind of leading back to my theory, right?
Yeah. I just have a very hard time with taking that away from one person. Because there's two people and two parents. And if one gets to do that, the other's stuck at home.
Use that. So I'm just confused. Like, what do you mean taking that away from one person?
That one person is allowed the opportunity to go out and better themselves. But the other person is stuck being that security figure. And maybe that's just me. But I would hate to be that person. And I don't know, from who I associate with, like women would also not like that.
Yeah.
And so I think it should be a balance between the parents of who gets to go out and who gets to do things.
I think you have a tilted view of who you're around, though.
I'm sure I do.
Yeah.
But I don't think
And
when one person is allowed to go out and do those things, one person is stuck at home. And I just don't necessarily think that's fair.
This goes back to, I kind of touched on it, but the idea of it's not leadership that was taken, it was leadership that was given. And so
that
it
person
wasn't,
chose to be at home.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think for the people who choose that, that's great. But I know that there's a lot of people who wouldn't choose that and they end up in that position.
But this is just where I'm going for what will work for most people. Because this is what we're missing that we kind of connected on is we don't have this traditional script of religion to read by for better or for worse.
Yeah.
And if we're going to call it for better, then we need some other script to read.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to get at with these generalities that I don't usually go for, but are necessary to help
people
produce these models for people to follow.
Healthy families, yeah.
And if we're not going to use religion as a model, then we need some sort of model. And the rational atheist types think that that model can be erected completely from rational statistics. And I think it's a blend between the two if we're not going to use religion.
Blend between, what would the second thing be? If it's not religion and it is rational, what was the second thing?
It'd be a blend between the spiritual and the scientific.
Okay.
Which is that mystical figure and that secure base idea. You know, it still has religious elements into it, but it gives people that have a bad taste of religion in their mouth a different model.
They can still be spiritual, but not necessarily religious.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where I think it, for right now, holds true. Of like a solid model to follow. Because then it's, if he is going out and doing things, then proper authority should be given to him. And then there should be almost, you would think, submission. I don't like the word submission, but this is something I was talking about with a friend the other day too. It's, we don't give women enough credit where you guys get to select us as guys, you know,
like it is a choice.
Yeah.
You do pick your partner.
You pick, and I'm speaking in typically you pick that partner to then be able to submit. And it gives you, and I know you don't like that because I think you tend towards the other way.
Yeah.
But like, even if you're the minority, that's still a script that has a minority running in you.
I don't think I got that one.
Even if you have, in general, but even if you have more tendencies as a woman, as a guy, you still have these scripts that are now a minority within you that are usually a majority within most women.
Okay.
Is what I'm trying to say. So they're still there. And so even to the ones that are exceptional in how they're tempered are still going to have some minority of this that plays into them.
Mm-hmm.
And then just by social contact itself with the friends around them is going to influence as well,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm.
So that itself almost leads more to finding some sort of generality
Mm-hmm.
because we're all going to tilt this way
Yeah.
anyways.
I have just seen a very, in my experiences, not even just like my friends and stuff, just like who I've interacted with in school or in work and like all these different locations, the minority is very large from my perspective. Like the minority of women who don't want that is large.
Yeah, but you, again, come from like a catered sample.
I know.
That is huge.
But
in
even without like not just within my friend group,
mm-hmm.
like even just who I've experienced like in school and high school, like
Mm-hmm.
not people I would even choose to talk to. I still like that minority is still large.
And I think this like comes down to an idea of maybe like a tiered model of for majority of people it's going to be a 60-40 split, and then for the extremes of people it's going to be like a 90-10 split, if that makes sense.
Split of
Gender roles, I guess you could say,
mm-hmm.
where maybe the majority fall in that 50-60, but then you still see this most of the time. And like there's a journal I like to, not journal, there's a, I don't know, article producer I like to read. I can't think of the it's called like Quillette or something like that, and it was started by a mom that was at home,
Mm-hmm.
and she had like 8 kids too.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like she had one kid and then started this thing on the
Yeah.
side. She had a lot of kids,
Mm-hmm.
and would like, while breastfeeding or between nap times, or just write a little bit
Mm-hmm.
and put stuff out there. And she was very smart and still
Yeah.
was able to fulfill
she
the
balanced
family.
it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And she's still spending 60% of the time with the family,
Right.
but then 40
She's still
was still on a
fulfilling that other
career.
part. Mm-hmm.
So that's not to say that this is no career for women.
Yeah.
That's not the
Yeah.
point of view I'm trying to take
Mhm.
at all. It's a
just more of a focus on
Yeah.
family. Mm-hmm.
yeah. It's a minority career for women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas the male is the opposite.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's more true.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree with that. Like, I think that's more. I don't think applicable is the word I'm looking for, but it's what I'm going with. But, yeah, more applicable to the world, like a less
Has more utility, more practicality.
Yeah, like a split where the mom isn't 90% home and 10% work, and
Yeah.
like I think it needs to. Yeah, I think 60-40 is probably more reasonable,
Mhm.
or I mean even 70-30, but I don't think it should be like a complete split,
Mm.
or like a complete you get one or the other.
Mm-hmm. Well, in that, like to outline it more, that 30% when the guy's there,
Mm-hmm.
then that's the
That's 30% that the wife
that
gets
the
to do something
woman gets to
else.
do something.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah,
like there's a given, there's
Yeah.
a pull
Yeah.
to these things.
I think if that balance is in play, that it's going to be more fulfilling to more people. Whereas, like how a lot of families are, if the mom stays at home, the dad comes home and goes to sleep and doesn't actually like
Mm-hmm.
spend the time with the kids.
Yeah.
I think that is an unhealthy balance, where the man is just expected to work and then he just gets to do
Yeah.
nothing afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
I think like that is a bad balance.
Yeah, because you've heard of that. It's not 50-50, it's 100-100
Mm-hmm.
idea. And I think that's right. But then what your 100 is spent on is differentiated between the two sexes.
Yeah.
And I think that's so smart to do.
Mm.
Because like the 50-50, it's like a compromise that nobody wins, I feel like, most of the
Yeah.
time. I think there's some relationships it would work for, but for most I don't think it would work for,
Yeah.
right?
I mean,
Because you
you don't want somebody putting in half their effort.
Yeah.
Like,
You get
what are
20
actually
hours.
accomplishing?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, I think my theory would work more times out of 10 as well, because if you have a figure that's going out and crushing it career-wise, that is, usually when you're doing good, things keep getting good and getting better.
Mhm.
And so you'd want that to keep multiplying. And then it's like, why even bother on the other side
Mm.
of the role of like, let's just let this keep spinning and getting good.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
instead of, how about you take some time off from that? That's already
Right,
good.
that's already
for me
going.
to do my little thing
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not even too serious about.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I think I agree more with the 40-60 split or whatever it is instead
Yeah.
of the like 90-10.
Yeah. But that's still like a differentiation
It is.
between the two,
Mhm,
you know?
mhm. I don't know if I personally will fit into that, but I could see that
Yeah.
working for a broader
But I
model.
think that's also because you tend differently,
Yeah. Right.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
which is to take into account.
Yeah. Yeah.
You stretching a bunch?
Yeah. This
Sit.
table is awful.
What do you mean?
Like my elbows hurt on this table.
Oh, I just do my edge.
Mm. Then I get the mic in the wrong spot.
Oh, that's why I choked down on it.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Smart plays here. Pro podcaster.
You've been doing this for a bit.
Yeah. Man, bring this baby home.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. Think of a question you want to ask anybody.
Oh.
And I have a question for you.
Oh God. Can you go first?
No, I don't have any. This is you. This is all
Oh.
on you.
Just to ask the audience?
Nope, this is for you. Would you rather have a corner brownie piece or a middle brownie piece?
Corner.
Okay. What's your
Easy.
question?
I guess to be something like that.
It's going to be asked to the next podcast person.
Oh, okay.
So that was asked to the previous person. Usually we talk about such serious things. I realize
wanna
that
end
people,
it, yeah.
I like serious things still.
Yeah.
Like
You'd end it in a serious way.
my favorite one so far was
Let's
not
hear it.
the brownie, but it was what's the ideal human?
Ah.
That was fun. But then it was asked to my Christian friend, and she's like, Jesus. I'm like, thanks.
Such an easy answer.
Yeah, I know. So I
There was
didn't.
no actual thinking of that.
No.
I mean, there was thinking, but.
I know what you mean. It was like I could have expected that.
Yeah. Okay.
But I don't want to tilt what you think. It can be anything you want. And as the next person doesn't bail, they'll actually get asked these things.
Yeah.
Because I would have had 2 more questions at this point.
Oh, yeah. Man. I'm blanking on everything.
That's fine.
My brain turned off.
You can be like, what's your favorite plant? Because you have a plant thing.
I have a plant thing. I do, in fact, like plants.
You do like plants.
Okay. Oh, yeah. What's your favorite flower/plant?
Alrighty. Thanks, everybody.